Welcome. We're glad you're here tonight. So welcome to your city council meeting, and we will start with roll call.
Cervantes. Kaufman Gomez.
Present.
Dutra.
Present.
Garcia. Here. Hernandez.
Present.
Hurst.
Here.
Bielisich.
Present. Thank you. And if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
So we do have the translation equipment over here by the booth. Para usar los aparatos de traducción, en español obtengo un aparato de la mesa junto de la caseta de traducir. Préndelo y usa canal 0. Cuélgaselo en el cuello con la frente hacia afuera. Si no puede oír, revise que el aparato esté encendido y sin obstrucciones. Solo funciona dentro de la Cámara del Concilio.
Thank you very much. And at this point, we will have presentation and oral communications. So let's start with oral communications from the public. If you have any item you'd like to address or speak on that is not on the agenda, please come forward.
Where is it? Where is it? I'm close because I can hear the mic. There it is. Good boy.
Oh.
Okay, down. Just looking for the mic.
It's right there. There you
it
go.
is. There we go. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the slight delay there. Good evening, council members, members of the audience. My name is Veronica Elzy, and tonight I'm here representing the Pedestrian Safety Work Group. We are a subcommittee of the Regional Transportation's Elderly and Disabled Transportation Advisory Committee. There went half my time. We are actually here tonight to introduce you to our newly completed brochure, What Pedestrians and Motorists Want Each Other to Know. And all of you council members should find a copy of the brochure in front of you. It's available in English and Spanish. And there were a couple of really important things that made us write this brochure, based on some kind of real world things that have happened. And our number one goal was to save lives, to help keep pedestrians safe, to help keep motorists out of accidents that they either couldn't help or weren't thinking about. We want to improve relationships between pedestrians and motorists and help them understand each other. We want to help make people able to better think and plan before they move on the sidewalk or on the road. And then because of the committee that we're in, we also wanted to take the time to help motorists understand the needs and some of the behaviors that are necessary for people with disabilities. And so I'll just kind of give you a couple of quick points that are from our brochures to give you an example of what we're talking about. Is one of the things that we talk about in terms of what pedestrians want motorists to know is that, for instance, when a blind person stops at a corner to listen, we're listening to traffic sounds. And sometimes the motorists are trying to figure out if we're going to go, and we're trying to figure out if the motorists are going to go. And it really helps for the motorists to understand that we're waiting to see what you do so that we know if it's safe to cross. We remind motorists to always look before making right turns to yield to pedestrians. We remind motorists to watch for shorter pedestrians. So that would include anyone who has a child in a stroller. It would include a pedestrian using a wheelchair. and that sometimes when the sidewalks are blocked, it forces people into the bike lanes or into the street. And so just to make people watching for pedestrians who may not all go the same speed, so don't assume that they're out of your way, out of your lane when you get there. So just kind of be more aware. And what motorists want pedestrians to know, we have things like it takes a car about 150 feet or 11 car lengths to stop, so don't dart out in front of the cars. Don't be unpredictable so that a car can't react to what you're doing. Especially, do not go out at night wearing dark clothing and make yourself visible. Look at the cars. Look.
That's okay. You can take a couple seconds here to finish up. That's okay.
And so it's very, very important just to kind of help get the communication going. And these brochures are available in English and Spanish. And they're also available on the website, which is www.sccrtc.org. That's for Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation. That can help you remember the initials. And then it's under pedestrian/projects. So there are 3 versions of it there, English, Spanish, and then a special text version. We are happy to come talk to neighborhood groups. We're happy to come back and give you guys a longer presentation if you'd like. If you'd like us to bring some brochures to your organization, we're happy to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, council members. I'm Darrell Johnson, board president,
I'm Jane Swickerath, board secretary.
and we represent the Seniors Council of Santa Cruz and San Benito counties. And we're here tonight to congratulate Rebecca Garcia and Jimmy Dutra on their election to the council. And so congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We also want to share a couple things that the Seniors Council has been involved with over the holiday season. We're proud that our in-kind program distributed over $200,000 worth of toys, bedding, household appliances, and other products to local nonprofit organizations in early December for distribution to their clients. These products were provided for a cost of less than $6,000. We also awarded over $70,000 in one-time only funding to our local network of contracted senior service providers.
And in January, our board unanimously voted to support the merger request of the Companion for Life program, adding this emergency response system to our growing network of providers. Companion for Life becomes the 5th program of the Seniors Council over the past decade. The Seniors Council continues to serve the vulnerable seniors throughout the community and the county. And we invite you to meet with our board and staff to learn more about our efforts and about the ways the condition of older adults in Santa Cruz County. We also want to express our appreciation for your support for seniors programs throughout the years.
And let me take a moment to also, since we're here, ask you to think about, our board has several spaces left, and we'd really love to find someone from South County to represent on our board. And Jimmy and Rebecca, we are going to be contacting you to meet and give you a little bit more background and information about the Seniors Council. We are the umbrella organization under which the Area Agency of Aging is served, and we'd love to get to know you better and welcome you to the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Falstick, and I'm a local educator and parent, concerned citizen too. And I just wanted to announce a contest that I've launched for youth in the Pajaro Valley School District, so grades 9 through 12. And I'd like to ask the community to support by encouraging students to enter, by donating for prize money. It's called the Climate Change Presentation Contest. And I designed this in conjunction with a number of other concerned community members and with PVUSD Science, the Digital Nest, and the Watsonville Library. So it's an exciting project that's bringing together big organizations in our community, serving youth. And I'm going to leave a flyer for the council to have for the future. And again, if anybody wants to donate, we have a tax ID number. We'll take donations of any size. We're raising lots of money to give directly to the students for prizes.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Maria Esther Rodriguez, your Assistant Director of Public Works and City Engineer. I want to wish you all happy Engineers Week. Murray Fonts, our Principal Engineer, has prepared a little packet for you as a reminder of the egg drop coming up this Thursday. It's our 12th annual egg drop competition, and it'll be held again this Thursday, 4 o'clock, here in the alleyway between the Civic Plaza and the postal office here. We all are invited to attend and bring their creative containers, and we'll see if eggs survive the fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public would like to address the council? Seeing none, we'll go back to council members. Any comments from council members? Councilmember Dutra.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to our council meeting this evening. Just a few things. I wanted to, first of all, give kudos to the city. I had the opportunity of going through their wastewater treatment facilities, and I was quite impressed to see what we do with our waste. We use every single part of it, and to the point where our farmers are using it to irrigate our fields. So I was really impressed. Watsonville is ahead of everybody in the game on this, and we should be all very proud of it. Something else I wanted to bring up is on March 1st, this Sunday, the Pearl Valley Shelter Service, along with the Watsonville Rotary, will be having their fundraising event at the Heritage Foundation Hall. It's a rock, paper, scissors tourney. You have to be 18 years and older. But I think this is something that everybody can play. I think most of us know how to do rock, paper, scissors. So, or if you don't, it'll take a few seconds to learn how to do it. But that's this Sunday at the Heritage Foundation. It's a great service here in Watsonville. Let's go out and support them and all their efforts they do through the Pearl Valley Shelter Service. And as usual, my Second Harvest Food Bank. This is a tough time of year for everybody. This is the busiest time of year for them. With most people out of work. So if they need help and volunteers, the more people we can get out there to help them distribute the food, we can help stop some of that traffic that's blocking the local areas and make sure that we can service as many people as possible during this time of year. So anyways, thank you so much. If you guys want more information about either the PV Shelter Service rock, paper, scissors tourney or how to get a hold of Second Harvest Food Bank, you can always get a hold of me and I will put you in touch with them. Thanks again.
Other council members. Councilmember Garcia.
Yes, there's a resource that I don't think is being taken advantage by our community that should be, and that is I had the privilege of going over to visit the Cabrillo Stroke and Disability Learning Center at Cabrillo in Aptos. And what the Stroke Center does, it works with students who are limited by stroke, arthritis, amputation, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, traumatic brain injury, speech, language, hearing disability. And what they do for the students is they give them classes for mobility, dexterity, fitness, adaptation, applied problem solving, communication, skills, counseling, and stress management. There's 150 students. Of the 150 students, 22% are from Watsonville. They do give the classes in Spanish and English bilingual. And for those students that cannot afford the student fees, they give scholarships. So I just want to pass out a brochure to each of the council members, just so that if you can spread the word amongst your constituency about that this service is available, it is something that I think should be taken advantage of. Also, I had the opportunity to meet with the manager of the airport and learn so much about the benefits of our airport, but also learned about the challenges that occur between the Pilots Association and the city in regards to general plan and in regards to the completion of Pajaro Valley High School. So we will need to be working together, closely together, so we can overcome these challenges. And finally, I just wanted to remind everybody that starting Thursday, March the 5th, the Watsonville Film Festival will start. And every day from Thursday till Sunday, different films will be showing either at the Green Valley Cinema or at the Mala Center. And I encourage all of you to come and see these wonderful films. A lot of hard work has gone into creating this festival. It's the third one, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And the one of the features that's going to happen, you probably all have heard of Jose Antonio Vargas, who is a Pulitzer Prize journalist. He received the Pulitzer Prize in writing about the Virginia Tech massacre. He's going to be one of the feature films, and he's going to be here too. And what's so unique about him is that about 4 years ago or 3 years ago, he came out and said he's undocumented. And so he's been very, very successful here as an American, but undocumented, and became a successful journalist. So I invite all of you to come out. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Other council members, Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
Not quite ready. I do want to commend the Sentinel over there in the corner for some of the recognition that we're seeing here with regarding employment opportunities. 300 jobs were announced. I've been seeing a lot of advertisements out there in terms of work that's available. So I'm hoping that we start to see some of our numbers slip in terms of our unemployment figures. In addition, you have 2 council members that have been actively participating on one of the boards, the Community Action Board, and they will conduct a workshop here on the 18th of March at the Old City Chambers to talk a little bit more about the 50th year of the war on poverty and the issues that are going on with regarding our community for that. I will be conducting a town hall meeting at the First United Methodist Churches on Stanford. That's going to be held the 31st at 6, and we're going to just talk a little bit more about what we're doing strategically here about some of the suppression intervention efforts for our community and some of the results and how those are going to play out with the community help that we are going to need and volunteers that we're going to ask for. So I encourage any of you that have an interest in that and learning a little bit more to come for that free town hall meeting that I'll go ahead and put together next month. And we have Freedom Rotary. I think we talked about Watsonville Rotary, so I'm going to go ahead and give kudos to Freedom side. We have the 31st annual casino night, and 100% of the proceeds are brought back into our community in terms of the nonprofit agencies. So I encourage any of you that have either come to the casino in the past, make it a habit this year as well, and know where your money's going, which is right back into our community here. I want to also congratulate 2 of our new council members, both Dutra and Garcia, who are going to participate in year 26 on the Focus Ag. And I was able to do that last year, and it was a huge benefit for me, big eye-opener, understanding a little bit more of the depth of knowledge with regarding the impact the agriculture industry has in our community with the businesses and what's going on over the course of history with that and other factors that play into it. And I had a couple things of interest that at the end I'll talk about to see if maybe we can get some updates with council that the community might have an interest in, so I'll hold those back for when we close. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members like to share comments? Councilmember Hurst.
Thank you, Nancy. And I want to commend the council members for being so active in the community, you know, to be out in the public, to be visiting these businesses, to see the wastewater treatment facility and the airport and the work on CAB and the time commitment it takes with AgriFocus. I was on the third year of the Focus Ag, and so, well, you forget a few things after a while. I probably need to go back if they would have me. So it's a wonderful opportunity to learn about the community and grow yourself and grow friends and grow the community as well. There's a couple of things going on that the public has expressed some concern about. One of them is the alternative school that's being built on Freedom Boulevard, or excuse me, Green Valley.
Green Valley.
It is Green Valley. Green Valley, kind of across from Carnation. And everybody knows that we need schools and we need alternative schools and we need places for students to prosper and bloom and grow. But kind of the surprise of the whole thing is that neighbors didn't feel like they really had adequate notice that the school was going to be constructed. And so neighbors have woken up to the bulldozers, and the trees have been removed and ground's been turned, and it's a change for them. And, you know, change can be tough, especially for the residents of the senior citizen complex by the name of Paloma del Mar, which is adjacent and directly in back of this facility. Also next door is the Freedom Meat Locker, and they had some knowledge of it, but apparently the plan had been vetted maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and some letter had been handed out in person to people at that time, but things change, and not all those folks who were there 7 or 8 years ago are there anymore, and so new people have taken their spot. So there is a subcommittee that's formed by the County Office of Education. This site is not in the city, although there was some confusion at the County Office of Ed about that, but it's not in the city. So a subcommittee of County Office of Ed personnel have been formed, Mr. Sales, Mr. Sanchez, and Ms. Barr, and they're glad to take public input and comments about how that school can be good neighbors, and they can be good neighbors, and good things can happen for students and residents alike. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Councilmember Hernandez.
I attended the Measure G committee meeting the other last week and a half, and I'm glad to see that everything is going good with the budget committee there. Chief Solano and Chief Barreto are doing a great job. They have 6 new officers. They hired 6 new officers and crime analysts with some of those Measure G funds, so things are really going good with that. I also had the opportunity to visit some new local business with Councilmember Hurst last week as well. We visited a place called OB Probiotic Soda over at the Westridge Business Park. It's a new business that's doing groundbreaking new sodas, probiotic sodas, and it's piquing the interest of some of the major soda companies as well. So we hope to hear a lot more from them in the future. There's a few things I want to, mention as well. We have a building business in California tax credit program that's going on this Thursday at the Monterey County Ag Center at 9:30 a.m., which is hosted by the Assemblymember Alejo. There's a Stanford University Arts Program, Arts Institute, is actually hosting a play by Sherry Moraga, a well-known writer, titled Watsonville. It's about Watsonville during the 80s. That some of us have been invited, so I encourage people, if they can make it out to Stanford, to go check out this play, and also check out the library. They got a display of a local photographer there from Watsonville, from District 7, that lives in District 7, that you guys should take a look at. The other thing that's happening is I think Councilmember Rebecca Garcia mentioned it already, but the 4th annual Watsonville Film Festival is happening on March 5th. So that's here at our very own Mallow Center. So if you have a chance, if you have the opportunity, go check it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Dutra.
I forgot. Just one more thing, because I know for many people, we're all excited when a new restaurant comes into town. And Ella's is not really new. They have a smaller little restaurant on East Lake, but they're opening their doors on March 3rd out at the airport. And I'm very excited that we're going to have a good restaurant here. Not that there are bad ones, but an addition to another good restaurant that we all can enjoy. So I really encourage you all to spend your money locally and support our restaurants and support Ella's. That's going to be opening up at the airport on March 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. I also had the opportunity to join the 211 protest. And you're thinking, what is that? What do you mean protest? Well, we have a service in this county, and if you pick up that phone and you dial 211, you can get help for basically anything. If you need help with housing, if you need help with childcare, if you need help about finding a doctor, whatever you need, we have this service in this county. And I think, the protest was a positive one, showing us the need for this service, and it's really a good benefit to our community. So if you're thinking, I don't know what to do, I don't know who to call, pick up the phone and dial 211. It's a great service that we have in our community, and I want to commend the people that came out and spoke about that. Also, we're having a new hotel is going in. Across from St. Patrick's Church. It's called La Cuenta. And I think people will be very happy that there's going to be a new hotel, hopefully sooner than later. I don't know. They have to follow the process and procedures, but there are talk of also other hotels coming into the area. And so I think this is a good thing for our economy. It will create more jobs, and wanted you to be aware of that. I had the opportunity to accompany Chief Solano and Lieutenant Saul Gonzalez to the Watsonville Rotary as they did a presentation on crime, gangs, the murders that have occurred in our city when everyone says, oh, it's all gangs. Well, if you look at what happened, it's about half are gangs and other reasons. And then people saying, well, those people, they don't even live here. You know what? They do. They're residents of our community. I think you need to be aware of that. So it was a great presentation, and I commend our police department. And I think things are going better at this time. But we've put a lot of effort into gang violence and violence in general in our community. So they should be commended. Also, last week we had a meeting about the Bridge Street median. Is it going to stay grass? Is it going to be drought-resistant plants? Are the trees coming out? Are the trees staying? The trees are going to be staying, and right now the immediacy is to remedy the water situation, because if you drive on Bridge Street, water is going out on the street, and it's a precious resource. So the conclusion is right now that we are going to fix the water system so that the grass will still be able to be watered at this time, and then we'll probably have meetings later to go and explore more drought-resistant plants once we come up with some capital to put into the project. But it was a nice community meeting, and I appreciated the staff support. We had Nancy Lockwood did a nice presentation, as did Anna Espinoza and other members of staff. It was good. And then I had an opportunity to serve with the Salvation Army. I don't know if you know, but every night a different group goes to the Salvation Army to serve many of the people that don't have enough food in our community. And we have a lot of different organizations that do this, and it's just another resource. And it was a very rewarding experience for me. And tomorrow, We are going to work on the RFP for the city manager. We're going to get together, we're going to meet, and hopefully select a group so we can start the process of the city manager selection. So I wanted to give you an update on that. Thank you very much, and I think we'll move on to report out of closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The council heard a report from and discussed all 4 cases that are on tonight's closed session agenda, but took no action on any of them.
Okay, so let's move on to item 6.0, public hearings, ordinances, and appeals, and we'll start with the Climate Action Plan and establishment of a carbon fund program. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Bilisich, members of the council. My name is Susie Merriam. I'm a planner with the Community Development Department. So tonight, hopefully, finally, we have brought before you the proposed Climate Action Plan and Carbon Fund to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the city of Watsonville over the next 20 years. The Climate Action Plan furthers the city's goals by providing pedestrian and bicycle-friendly neighborhoods, increased transportation options, improved energy efficiency, reduced waste, and increased recycling, as well as the protection of open space. The city is also proposing the adoption of the Carbon Fund ordinance to provide a continual source of funds to carry out the policies in the Climate Action Plan. So just to go into a bit of the background, the state of California has been a national leader in adopting regulations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at the state level since 2002. They adopted regulations to reduce vehicle emissions. And then in 2005, we had Executive Order S3-05, which set our first greenhouse gas reduction targets. And this was where they decided that we would reduce our emissions to 1990 levels by the year 2020. And then by the year 2050, we'd reduce those to 80% below 1990 levels. That was changed later on with AB 32, the Global Warming Solutions Act. It was passed in 2006. It further refined the executive order, and they set a different baseline year. As when they went to look at things, they realized, wait, how do we get emissions information from 1990? So for the city of Watsonville, that base year is 2005. So a couple years ago, a little over 2 years ago, the city of Watsonville was granted a Strategic Growth Council planning grant to develop a local plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions here at the city of Watsonville, as well as to create some sort of carbon offset program from the city. So we've been working on that for the last 2 years. The procedure tonight is outlined generally in Chapter 2 of the Watsonville Municipal Code. Council may adopt resolutions to express administrative decisions that are of a permanent or lasting nature. So the Climate Action Plan is being considered by resolution. Ordinances are used to adopt formal legislative policies, such as the proposed Carbon Fund ordinance. So that's coming to you as an ordinance. Resolutions are effective immediately after approval. However, ordinances require a second reading at a subsequent hearing, and under our ordinance and regulations won't become effective for 30 days after that final adoption. So the city went through a public process to hire a consultant team, and our consultants are here tonight. We've got Betty Cito from DNV GL, which actually was Kima at the time that we originally hired them. They've gone through a couple name changes. We've got James Barsimontoff and Tiffany Wise West there with EcoShift, and they were responsible for creating the carbon fund ordinance, whereas Betty and DNVGL worked mainly on the climate action plan. But we all worked together over the approximate 1-year period with a technical advisory committee and a couple public hearings to draft a plan and continual funding stream that really works for the city of Watsonville. So we've got policies in here that are actually attainable, and then a fund that's both workable for the any applicants, for the public, as well as city staff. So we did do community outreach. All of our meetings were publicized, and all the meeting minutes and agendas were available on the website throughout the process. We did have 2 community meetings, one near the beginning of the process and one near the end. One in September of 2013, we really focused on policies to include in the climate action plan, whereas the one in May of 2014 was geared more towards the carbon fund and how to get that really to work smoothly, and to hear from the public what they wanted to see in there. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Betty, who is going to give you an overview of the climate action plan, and then we'll move it down the table to James and Tiffany, who will finish off with the carbon fund.
Thanks, Susie. Good evening. The DNVGL team is extremely pleased to be here tonight to present the proposed climate action plan and review with the council, some of the key components of our project. So we really have to commend the city for designing a 2-part project that, both develops a roadmap for greenhouse gas emissions reductions, but also develops the financing and the funding mechanism in order to make, the vision and the, desired actions come to life. So in terms of the climate action plan and carbon fund project, it really serves as a roadmap for community-wide greenhouse gas emissions reductions. That, as Susie mentioned, meets all of the state requirements for emissions reductions and goes hand in hand with the general planned process as well. A big component of the climate action plan is to leverage all of the wonderful existing programs and initiatives that are already underway here in Watsonville, and we want to recognize and celebrate that as part of the climate action plan and work with the community through our outreach process to identify, what else can we do related to sustainability and, greening our community. And finally, we wanted to develop a plan that also supports a robust local economy and funding for local projects for emissions reductions. So what is a climate action plan anyways? The state does provide specific guidance for what a climate action plan should include. It should include 5 key components. 1, an inventory of what the greenhouse gas emission sources are here in the city of Watsonville. 2, what emissions would look like, what is the forecasted emissions without a climate action plan? What can we expect emissions levels to be in the city of Watsonville without taking any action? And, setting a reduction target for greenhouse gas emissions in the future. In this case, we're recommending that the, city comply with the state requirements under AB 32, which is a 15% reduction below 2005 levels by 2020. And then an interim 2030 target to set the city upon a path to the 80% reduction by 2050. And finally, the climate action plan should identify all of the existing and current programs, as well as any new actions that are needed to meet the reduction target. So we started the project by looking at the greenhouse gas emissions sources here in the community. And the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, AMBAG, actually led the emissions inventory activities. So you can see here in 2005, the emissions are approximately 219,773 metric tons CO2. And then AMBAG also conducted a 2010 inventory, which found that there was a 14% reduction since 2005. So the emissions in 2010 were approximately 187,000 metric tons. So the business as usual line is here, and the business as usual forecast is based on the AMBAG sort of projections for population and employment, and that is consistent with the general plan 2030 numbers. So they do go hand in hand. And then the red bars here show the emissions reductions needed in order to meet this target of 15% below 2005 by 2020, and then a recommended 25% below 2005 by 2030 target. Okay, in order to meet the reduction targets, the Climate Action Plan outlines existing, new, and supporting actions. And these actions include such activities such as increasing participation in the local green business program, voluntary lawn replacement removal programs, implementation of a formal bike lane and bike infrastructure program, promotion of renewable energy resources such as solar. So we worked with our technical advisory committee, and we also worked with the public through our public workshops in order to formulate the new actions and sort of what actions do we want to highlight as part of the Climate Action Plan. So our analysis subsequently focused on new actions that were being proposed in the Climate Action Plan. And this was an area that we worked with the Technical Advisory Committee closely to analyze, what are the relative costs and benefits associated with any new actions. And the actions were scored on 4 key criteria, including the environmental benefits, cost, ease of implementation, and additional benefits such as health or local jobs, local air quality. And as a result of the analysis, we prioritized the actions as either near-term actions, so those would be implemented by 2020, or longer-term actions that would be implemented between 2020 and 2030. So the Climate Action Plan also includes steps to address the unavoidable impacts of climate change. Even if we stop emitting greenhouse gas emissions today, there's a certain amount of momentum in the Earth's climate system that will continue to, result in changes in our climate system. So we looked at, potential impacts, as shown here on the list, and we identified that heat waves, long-term power outages, severe storms, and drought were really the key impacts that the city of Watsonville should focus on. And we came to that conclusion through a risk assessment or a risk analysis, which is based on what kind of looks like a matrix. It's shown in the Climate Action Plan, but it's basically what is the probability of an impact happening, and then what is the magnitude of the consequence. So if something is highly probable and has a high consequence in terms of health, life, or property, then that's scored higher. So that's where our recommendations came from. And we recognize the city has many measures in place already to reduce, resource consumption, use of water, increase the tree canopy, and build safer, more efficient buildings. All those are really important adaptation strategies, and we wanted to include that in the Climate Action Plan as important considerations and important programs to build upon, in planning for a future with less water and potentially more extreme weather events. So finally, the Climate Action Plan also includes an outline for the city to track its progress. So we started the Climate Action Plan by measuring greenhouse gas emissions. You can't manage what you don't measure. So the Climate Action Plan includes a provision for re-inventorying the city's emissions every 5 years. The Climate Action Plan is meant to be a living document. It's meant to be revisited. It's meant to be updated as new technologies change, as the city continues its future planning processes. So it is meant to be something that you revisit from time to time. So in terms of the funding mechanism, how do we finance the activities included in the Climate Action Plan? I'm pleased to present my colleagues from EcoShift, James, who led the development of the Carbon Fund and will walk you through the components of that part of the project.
Good evening. I'm James Barcimanto with EcoShift. Maybe I can click for me. So a lot of climate action plans in jurisdictions are difficult to implement because there's so many actions that require funding. And so it's an unfortunate thing that happens that a lot of jurisdictions end up with climate action plans that they can't reach their goals because they don't have the funding to do so, which is why this is a really commendable effort in the city of Watsonville that there's, combined with the climate action plan, is a mechanism to provide funding to implement actions in the climate action plan. Clearly, there will be funding from other sources. There will be projects that don't require funding, but this is an important mechanism to help reach the goals of the climate action plan. To develop this carbon fund program, we started with a pretty exhaustive review of other mechanisms that cities and states around the U.S. and actually in Europe are using to collect funds to implement climate action plans and achieve carbon reductions goals. So we looked at programs in the city of Cleveland, the city of San Francisco, Finger Lakes in New York, Southampton in London, and so on and so forth to see what other jurisdictions are doing. And with input from the Technical Advisory Committee, we settled on this carbon fund program. There was a lot of input through this process to make it a streamlined system that's easy to implement, that is, achieves clear reductions, and is doable and provides incentives. So the core of the program is a new carbon impact fee on all development. I'll talk about exactly how that works and how much it is and so on and so forth on the next slides. But just to give an overview, if you go down the left side of the arrows, you'll see that if a business or residents or developer, whoever is applying for a building permit, does nothing, then they would pay the full impact fee with no refund. That impact fee amount would go into the carbon fund, which is managed by the city, which would be directed to implement climate action plan projects, which would result in reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. On the other hand, on the right side of arrows, if the applicant for the building permit decides to comply with the suggestions of the carbon fund and install renewable energy technologies, they can receive a refund for that fee. So it creates an incentive for applicants to install solar panels or other forms of renewable energy. And depending on how much renewable energy they install, they get a different amount of refund. So basically, this refund makes installing solar panels a little bit better on the payback because they will reduce other costs that are associated with the permit, which creates an incentive for clean energy buildings. So basically, the funds collected would create reductions, or if folks decide to install solar panels or other renewable technologies, then they would get an incentive based on that reduced permit fee. So details on how it works. Who does the carbon fund program impact? All new proposed developments, including new construction for non-residential and residential additions, non-residential and residential, and alterations, non-residential and just multifamily residential. This was based on input from the Technical Advisory Committee that single-family residential alterations should be exempt, because if someone is, replacing a roof on their house or something minor like that, we wouldn't want to, burden single-family residences in that way. How will it be assessed? The carbon impact fee is calculated as a % of the building permit fee. So for new construction, it's 50% of the new of the building permit fee, not impact fees, just the building permit fee. It would be 30% of the building permit fee for multifamily residential and non-residential additions and alterations, and finally 30% for single-family residential additions. And again, of course, single-family alterations are exempt from the fee. And so we can look at some examples about how much money that turns out to in a little bit. How does it work for getting the carbon impact fee refunded? So installing on-site renewable energy systems allow you to achieve that refund. New residential, basically all building classes are eligible for a refund under this program. So when does it go into effect? The Carbon Fund Ordinance must be adopted by the City Council, which is why we're here tonight. The ordinance will be effective 6 months after adoption by the City Council. Where will I find information about the Carbon Fund program? The Carbon Fund program and the ordinance and the voluntary compliance worksheets will all be located at the Watsonville Community Development Department website. How will the funds be used? Proposed projects by Public Works, Planning, or other departments are eligible to use funds. Proposed projects must have a direct or indirect greenhouse gas emissions reduction identified, and projects should be aligned with the priorities identified in the Climate Action Plan. So there isn't really a necessity to find ways to spend this money. There is a long list of proposed actions in the Climate Action Plan, which city staff will work on determining how to use that.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Betty. So you've heard a summary of the Climate Action Plan. You've heard a summary of the Carbon Fund Ordinance. And Planning Commission hearing, Planning Commission recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution approving the Climate Action Plan and adopt the Climate Fund Ordinance. And this concludes our presentation. So we're available for questions.
Questions from the council? Councilmember Kaufman-Gomez.
After a lengthy amount of questions that I gave you so that we don't have to burden everybody until midnight, I do have a few left over based on the presentation. The first one I have is 6 months to adopt this. Why would it take so long for us to adopt something on an ordinance basis?
We decided that after it would be adopted, rather than the 30 days after final approval, that we would give time for outreach to the construction development community and really work out the kinks on that side. So it's giving us a margin to do some marketing and outreach after this gets adopted.
So anybody that has plans already don't need to be part of the ordinance and the changes at this point because they've already been submitted, as an example?
Exactly. Anyone who already has plans in or plans in that are deemed complete in the 6 month period before this becomes effective would be exempt from the requirement.
It's a pretty aggressive plan. I do see that from the details that have been put into this for us to bring those carbon emissions down tremendously over the course of years. And again, I think I made my comments out there. In the time of the funding, I guess that what we had here in the report was about $80,000, maybe $90,000, give or take, in terms of the collection of the fees.
That's an estimate.
And
yes.
What would you anticipate to use the funds towards for implementation, other means for this?
There could, there are a lot of different things it could be used for. One of them could be marketing. One thing it can't pay for is staff time. So we won't be paying any staff to be doing this, which is a little bit different. The city of Santa Cruz does have a similar fee on development. It doesn't all go to green building, but it's a portion of a different fee. It goes to actually fund their greenhouse gas emissions staff, their climate change staff, whereas ours would actually be funding projects. So if we're looking at additional bike lanes or pedestrian trails, trees, yeah, just a couple, 46,000 trees or so.
Give or take, yes.
Yes.
Let's talk about the trees. I'd like to focus on how and where we're going to put 46,000 trees.
In 6.5 square miles.
46,000 additional trees
Dwarfs,
in our
right?
community. Is that what I understood?
That was, that actually came from our urban greening plan. And that is, if we get to 46,000 trees by 2030, I would be surprised, but that is a goal to reach. And that's, I believe, 40% of the city being under tree canopy. And that is a great way. Number one, it's I believe, for flooding, but it's also sucking up the CO2 from the air, and then it provides shade. So not that we need, we have a great need for air conditioning here in our climate. It also provides shade and cooling, as well as aesthetic benefits for the community.
But a goal. So what happens if we don't meet the goal or people don't want to plant a lot of trees? I mean, what
We
are
can't
the,
force people to plant trees. As again, we are going to be reviewing our climate action plan every 2 years. We're going to be doing a greenhouse gas inventory every 5 years. And if our inventory is showing that we aren't meeting our goals, then we might have to look at additional measures or other things to add into the climate action plan. If trees are not going to be helping us get there, then we'll have to look at other things.
is every city developing a plan such as this?
Pretty much, yes.
And have the developers already been apprised of this?
We've put out public notices, and it's been on our website, and we've been in this process for 2 years. So as much as the city can, yes. It's also been in the paper a few times.
I just want to make sure, because I don't want them coming back next week or whatever saying, you know, you put this in and we don't know anything about it. So I don't know if you've just put it in ads. Have you contacted them with, I don't know, postcards or whatever? I don't know what you've done.
In our for our last public meeting, we did do outreach to all solar contractors. We have done outreach to Builders Exchange. We have put it on the website. Again, we've sent out mailers to certain sectors in the community. There's no way to directly reach every single developer, but we also did have postings for the public meetings up in our community development department, where we see a high volume of architects and developers.
Contractors?
And contractors, yes.
So basically you think contractors, developers, they're all aware, they all know about this?
We made our best effort to make them aware of this.
Councilmember Dutra.
What are they saying about this? Have you been, from the ones you have heard back from?
Really, I haven't heard anything back from them.
Does that draw you some concern at all?
Well, you know, I don't know what else the city could have done to reach out to them, but talking to them at the counter and putting flyers at each station at the front counter, as well as on the website and in the newspaper, and the articles going out in the newspaper, is pretty much the limit that we can do with our staff time.
If I can also add that it might be that they're not that concerned, because the actual, you know, the carbon fund fee as a percentage of the total building value is actually quite minimal. And we did a pretty extensive comparison at the request of the Technical Advisory Committee to look at the building fees in other jurisdictions nearby, and found that they actually came in under what else is out there. They were worried, of course, that, you know, potentially raising fees would cause people to develop elsewhere, but we really found that fees in Watsonville are actually less than elsewhere. So maybe they're just not that concerned.
So we're assuming that they're not concerned because there hasn't been any
That's one
reaction.
reason. That's one reason why perhaps we haven't heard back.
Because I think, you know, for a place like Watsonville, development's really important. We're wanting to build here. We're wanting to bring businesses in here. We want people to open their doors. We have a place of a struggling economy, and the more restrictions we put on to onto, you know, people who have potentially will open up their doors here that will walk away because they can do it somewhere else. You know, we don't want to do that. We want to be able to be, you know, not only friendly to our environment, but friendly to businesses. And so I just have a little bit of a concern that we haven't heard any. I mean, if I was a developer, I would have, whether or not it was good or bad, I would be making a point. And I know that there are developers in this community who in Watsonville alone build. So, I mean, you could reach out to them because they're just known. I mean, they're just known developers here, and just to see what they feel like, what they think about it. You know, you talk about you can revisit the climate action plan every 2 years. So is it every 2 years you won't make any adjustments to it, or can you go back, revisit it in 6 months, or how does that work?
We recommend every 2 years at a minimum, but it could be more frequently than that. So if you hear concerns from, developers or other members, or if there are things that just change, then, you're very free to update the climate action plan at that point.
As well as the carbon fund.
Oh, yeah, and
So
as well
both,
as carbon fund.
yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
So you can revisit them in 6 months if something changed. And then one other question, I know I had already spoken to you about this, and I just want to bring it up. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only way you can receive your 100% back is if you put solar paneling on the project?
Right.
It doesn't have to be only solar. It can be other renewable energy resources, and it can also be energy efficient design, so passive heating and cooling, daylighting, so other things to bring down your energy consumption below the prototypical baseline code compliant building.
To receive 100%, because he just said solar power, you'd have to have solar powering.
Sorry about that. Yeah, you could do energy efficiency or other types of renewable technologies, and to get 100% refund, you have to reduce the building energy use by 80%.
And in order to do that, so you can achieve that 100% without having just to put solar paneling on. You can do it through, I guess, windows or insulation, lighting.
Sure, if you can make a net zero building without having solar panels, yeah.
Is it possible? I don't want to make it difficult on people. That's what I'm trying to get here. Is it how possible is it to do it without solar paneling?
I'd say solar panels to make it cost effective is probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
But for a large facility, there could be other options for ground source heat or potentially wind if it's by the coast. Other renewable technologies.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
How are the fees determined?
In terms of how much it should be?
Mm-hmm. You know that when the developer has a fee, you know where it's going. It's going to be passed on to the consumer.
Right.
So how are the fees determined?
Yeah, maybe we can go to the slide that has the appendix slide.
Oh, appendix, so go down.
Just in terms of how much it would. There it is. Yeah. So basically, we set about looking at. We basically didn't want to make it overly burdensome, and so we said, okay, if we had a percentage of this, what would it look like as compared to the existing building fees, including impact fees? So what we see is for a commercial addition valued at over $300,000, 30% of the building permit fee is $1,600, which is pretty insignificant compared to that overall cost of the building. Residential addition at $160,000, the 30% of the building permit fee is $442. So we actually, I think, cut the number in half based on feedback from the Technical Advisory Committee. So it was actually a larger percentage before.
I don't. My math may be not very good here because it looks to me like 30% of 300,000 is $1,600.
Yeah, that's the valuation. The 300,000 is the valuation of that project, and the building permit fee is based on a number of items, connections of sewer and so on and so forth. So it's actually, you can't just make a direct comparison to the building valuation, because for that 300,000, that's actually an individual, that's a specific project, and the building permit fee that was calculated for that specific project was 30% of that is $1,670.
Project is about $6,500.
Right.
Yeah, Nancy Keith Boyle, Acting Community Development Director.
Thank you.
I did participate extensively in this process, and we did make sure, originally the fee was significantly higher, and we wanted to make sure we understand the importance of development in the community. We want to make sure that this is not burdensome. So it is based on permit fee. It's not impact fees, other things associated with it. So it's basically just a percentage of the building permit fee, which is a small portion of what current impact fees. And when you look at other communities, we're still way lower, even with this impact fee, than what other jurisdictions charge for building permits. So, I think that's part of the reason why you're not getting a lot of pushback, because our fees are already low. This doesn't create significant burden on the development community.
Go ahead.
I think the piece that maybe you're not making the connection with is when you pull a permit to build a new commercial building, that cost that you pay reflects a lot more than just the building permit fee. It reflects a lot of impact fees. So it's not the total cost that you're paying when you pull a permit, that this is 30% off. It's only the line item called building permit fee, which is a line item in a whole permit. So if the permit is going, like, look at the middle one, residential addition valued at 160. So you basically double the size of a house, and the fee for that would be $442. So the permit fee
For the carbon impact fee.
yeah, and what I'm saying is the permit fee for that is the building permit, the traffic impact fee. It could be water connection fee. It could be a sewer upgrade. It could have facility impact fee, fire impact fee, all these impact fees. But it's not 30% of the total. It's 30% only of the building piece. But all that other stuff gets added to a permit. So if you're saying a permit usually costs $14,000, that includes all the impact fees. But the building permit may just be $1,000, so it'd be 300 of that.
Okay, I got it. Because it doesn't look like this
No.
is any 30% of 160,
Right.
you know?
Right.
The way this is set up doesn't look.
No, it's the
right.
valuation of the remodel. So think of my house in the middle. That's right there.
I think that was the example, actually.
Yeah.
There are obviously a lot of fees to build things, you know, I mean, but this is just an additional fee. Go ahead, anybody? Yes, Councilmember Garcia.
My question is going to come from the initial report from this hard copy. And on page 29, you talk about community choice aggregation, CCA, and that Watsonville plans to join that. Can you tell us what CCA is and what are the benefits of becoming part of that program? And when will the feasibility study be completed?
So community choice aggregation is essentially, it allows for cities to procure their power on the wholesale market separate from PG&E. So you would no longer buy power from PG&E. Your community could source its own electricity, and that you can source it from a variety of different retail providers, and you can also choose your own percentage of renewable energy. So we provide a couple of examples here, mainly from Marin, where their CCA offers two options. One is a 50% renewable energy option, and the other one is a 100% renewable energy option. So I know that James and Tiffany have been working closely with some of the CCA initiatives happening here in the Tri-County area. So can you provide an update on the feasibility study and sort of where we are with that?
Sure. As far as I know, all the jurisdictions, or the large majority of the jurisdictions in the region, have signed up to be part of the feasibility study in the Tri-County region. And the RFP to conduct the feasibility study was released 2 weeks ago, and responses are due in a few weeks. And then I'm not sure when they expect it to be completed, maybe about a year from now or so.
And what are the specific benefits from being part of it?
Yeah, so basically two benefits is that achieving, so for an equivalent amount of renewable energy, it's likely that the cost to consumers would be lower for electricity. And that's basically because PG&E is a for-profit, and this would be run as a nonprofit basically. And the community would have greater control over what's done with the revenues to use those for other complementary energy programs. And then the other benefit would be for the same price, or maybe a tiny bit more, citizens could choose to have higher amounts of renewable energy, where that's not an option right now from PG&E. So the goal is to allow folks to do the same thing as what they're doing now for a little bit cheaper, or do more renewable energy for the same as now, or maybe a little bit more.
And did you want to say?
Also, there was a presentation by the CCA about a year and a half ago to the council, and they agreed to look at a feasibility study to look into it. This policy does not commit you to joining that. It's up to the council to listen to what the feasibility says. You know, it's an option. So although it's a policy, it's just something to recommend that you look at it. So you have to talk to all the public to see if they want to join it after they give you the information. But more information will be coming. Adopting this will not commit you to joining that in the near-term future.
Keith, is that like these people that are going around right now talking to many residents and saying, you know, you can pay this fee and you don't have to pay it to PG&E, and or you can
Yeah, I mean,
change and use
there
a
is
different.
there is a group out there, the CCA. They've done a presentation again before anything actually happens. That there's been a feasibility study that they're in process to do before anything happened with a full community. That would have to come back to the council with a full presentation, public hearings, all of that. So it's an extensive process to go that direction. So you know, it's a good idea, and you've agreed to study it, but there is no commitment to move forward with that as part of this document.
The people coming door to door that you're referring to are the people, the gas companies as a result of the deregulation. So they're just trying to offer you a different gas company. But it's
And
not
it gets confusing.
It is very, very
confusing for the average
Oh
resident.
yeah, we have so many. I don't know. There's got to be 5 companies going up and down the streets in Watsonville right now on gas alternatives, different gas companies. And they say it so fast, it's really confusing. But what he's talking about is not them.
It's totally different. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hurst.
I didn't finish.
I'm not sure Councilmember Garcia's
Oh,
finished
okay, go
yet.
ahead.
I didn't finish.
Let her finish, please.
Go
Thank you. My second question has to do with the carbon fund. And in terms of the carbon fund fees, do those fees become part of our general fund?
No, they are kept separate. They would be kept separate in their own carbon fund, so that they could only be used for specific activities.
Okay. And then my final comment is that, and I shared this already, that what is missing for me is that again, from this hard copy on page 13, it says that carbon dioxide largest contributed to climate change, that carbon dioxide is the largest contributor to climate change. And what was not addressed in the report was in terms of, I don't know how many drive-throughs we have in Watsonville, drive-throughs in terms of banks, businesses, fast foods, but when there's drive-throughs, there's idling cars, and when there's idling cars, there's carbon dioxide emission. And so wanted to know at what point can we address that issue about the drive-throughs, or just recommend that at some point, because this is a living document, at some point we address that.
Generally, that level would be looked at on a case-by-case basis. I think you have policy direction as part of the climate action plan, but you wouldn't be looking at this plan to give you all the specifics. Looking at the actual carbon emissions of a specific project would be done at a project level.
Well, I'm just thinking, I guess it was at the project level. We have a roundup out now because of the emissions of the long lines of cars that we had. And so there was no mention that we were even going to look at it here. And so that's why I bring it up.
Councilmember Garcia, if I might mention, the city of Santa Cruz actually had a very similar thing that's happening right now. They didn't have any anti-idling recommendations in their climate action plan, but because of some community concerns over that, they're actually considering, and I think they're going forward with adopting a 90-second limit on idling. So even though it's not in the plan, doesn't necessarily mean that that kind of thing can't happen, or perhaps in the future that can be revised and added as an action.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How would that be enforced, a 90-second idling?
I don't know the details of that.
I mean, if you're stopped at a signal and it doesn't change, or, you know, you're far back.
Yeah, I don't think that that's part of it. I think it's more when you're in a parked space.
Okay.
They have an auto shut-off on your car.
All right.
Like
Councilmember
old
Hurst.
Jack.
That's where you have the person with the stopwatch. It's employed, and they get a job out of that, and they keep time for you. On page 28, there's a mention of a PACE program, a PG&E finance type program. Is that the same thing we're talking about with the PCA? No. All right, let's don't confuse that issue then. Let's go to something really clear and easy to understand. The 2030 general plan. Numerous references in here about that. Can you give the public kind of an update as to where we're at with the 2030 general plan? Public might want to hear that.
Yeah, there was a separate environmental document prepared for this project. We did not rely on the 2030 general plan. We did a specific negative declaration. It's part of the reason why it took a little bit more time for us to move forward. So anyway, there are specific numbers that are in that initial study that reference the carbon fund. And so it doesn't directly relate to the 2030. It's still a little bit in legal limbo. So we had to do a separate environmental review in order to do that. So that is kind of the nutshell of why we're moving forward and why there was a separate environmental review on this project.
Thanks so much for that poignant clarification. A little bit in legal limbo. Just a little bit in legal limbo. How about those AMBAG numbers? Are those pretty reliable and clear cut?
Yes.
They're dependable. You can go to the bank with the AMBAG numbers?
Yes.
Oh.
Really?
The reductions
A little bit.
the reductions that they recommended are concrete and based on known science on this information. Some of the other ones we may have some issues with, but in regards to the carbon fund issues that were raised and doing the inventory, they did a great job.
Well, I'm glad to hear that too, because past practice has been sometimes the on-the-ground reality is a little bit different than the projections way out into the future. I see that the PACE program that I referenced earlier on page 28, is there a court challenge to that in some way?
There was a national issue about PACE, and that's been resolved over the last couple of years. So PACE is alive and well and moving forward in a lot of jurisdictions around the state.
That's good to hear as well. Yes, there are a lot of fees, but there's also a lot of impacts. And all those impacts, they're not cheap either. And so I know that the public has had more than ample opportunity to already comment on this plan. The number of hearings, workshops, planning commission meetings. You can read the notes in the staff report. So there's been plenty of opportunities for people to be aware. Maybe you didn't need to hire some guy at Home Depot to hold up a sign and make the contractors more aware, but I think that most people in the permit business keep an eye on these things, hopefully. But there are impacts, and they do have a cost to the community. Let's talk about trees for just a moment. Yes, that's a big projection, and I've heard some people say, oh, that's way too many trees, and where would we put them all? Well, there have been a lot of trees removed in the city. I remember there was a wonderful row of trees along the Rancho Cerrito mobile home park on Green Valley Road, and they got old and had to be removed or were removed, and nothing was ever replaced. And throughout neighborhoods, you see trees cut down all the time, and sure, some people are planting trees, but there probably are opportunity spots for more trees and replacement of trees as well. So that's an ambitious goal, but I know that there are places where trees have been removed and not replaced. And last, I'd like to go to the attachment number 3, page 1, that talks about who the carbon fund program impacts. And the third bullet is alterations. I want to get a little more clarification as to what an alteration could be and would not be. So give me some examples of how I can have an alteration that is exempt.
Great. All right. You can redo your kitchen. You can remodel the entire inside of your house. You can replace your water heater. You could replace a toilet even. You can do, for single family, you can do anything up to 499 square feet of an addition and not have to pay that fee. So pretty much an alteration or a repairs permit where you're not adding any new square footage would be exempt from the fee.
So a roof replacement would not be an alteration?
Roof replacement would not be an alteration.
Putting in more energy efficient windows?
Nope.
What about a fence?
Nope.
Patio?
Nope. In fact, any non-habitable building, so something that's not heated, like a garage, or
a chicken
storage
coop
shed.
that I could rent out?
Chicken coop, as long as it's not heated, is exempt.
How about if I bring a charcoal barbecue into it?
Exempt.
You know, that has happened. Well, I'm glad to hear that there are some clarifications on what alterations are, and I'm sure there'll be a list of those or what's allowed and what's not, because I think that's where the rubber meets the road and the confusion really occurs on occasions, that people have expectations of one thing and then reality sets in. That's all my comments or questions at this time.
Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
One thing was, are we revisiting again in 2015, or is this a final visit for 2015? Because it's every 5 years, and it was 05, 10, and we're due for 15. So we're going to be revisiting this again this year. Would that be correct?
We're not revisiting the climate action plan this year, but we will be doing a greenhouse gas emissions inventory.
Okay, so we do the inventory, which is what we're using some of the basis for this, isn't it? For what we're trying to accomplish?
Then in another 2 years, we'll look at that inventory and then look at our climate action plan and go from there. But at this point, yeah, we're not looking at doing a 2015 inventory and then turning around and making an update to the climate action plan.
Yeah, I thought that seemed to be premature when I saw some timing in there. And I think I can concur with some of the AMBAG numbers of 366,270 miles that start and finish here out of 6.5 square miles that we have. So I'm really trying to grasp at the volume of either people leaving and the distance that they have to go that come from this particular city limit, or the number is just exorbitantly displaced somehow. I just don't see the feasibility. And the Hero, and there's also one too, that Hero and Pace are both ways of getting funding that is leaned against the property and is being paid out on a tax basis for some of these greenhouse or some of the green energy projects, putting in the solar or other significant capital improvement projects to properties. And one thing that we need to think about is the disclosure that happens with, because when a property is sold and there's financing that's used with Pace or Hero, it carries with the new owner of that purchase, and disclosures need to be available for anybody that are going through that process. And sometimes they don't get what their property tax bill is until 3/4 of the way in a transaction. So we have to be very careful on making sure that is being disclosed upon transfer of title or an escrow of transfer of title, because that does carry over with a new owner.
Good point.
Thank you.
What was the cost of the RFP?
The entire project grant was for $298,000. I'd have to go back and look at the file as to what our actual contract with Akima and EcoShift was. But the entire grant included coverage of staff time, administrative costs, as well as the consultant.
And the money came from?
The money came from a grant at the state. It's a strategic planning grant.
The entire amount?
Yes.
Okay. Any other council questions? Well, I think it's time that we ask the public. If anyone would like to come up and talk with us about this, please feel free to come to the microphone at this time.
Hi there. My name's Sarah Rowe. I'm a teacher at Watsonville High. I taught your son. And Jimmy, did you go to school at Watsonville High?
I did. Class of 1993. Thanks.
They all did.
If I remember correctly.
I think we're all Wildcats
Yeah.
up here right now. So.
I think I might have been your teacher, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I remember your name. I remember your face. And I actually brought some students tonight because at Watsonville High we're doing something very exciting. It's a political action project. And it plays in here because what students are doing is they're asking questions and thinking about different ways of getting involved in the community. And so some of the students that I have with me tonight are here because they're curious about this, because the other thing I do in my spare time while other people knit is I'm working on a PhD. And my PhD is in sustainability. It's actually transformative inquiry. And my specialization is sustainability. So of course this is like, I can't even sit still, I'm so excited. It's like candy today. Anyway, I'm really excited about what you're doing, and as a member of Watsonville High and a member of the Watsonville community as a teacher, I want to applaud you for something really exciting and for taking some really great leaps towards carbon emission reduction, and in particular incentivizing it. And I want to emphasize the part of incentivizing, and the fact that in your plan what you've really focused on is making sure that it's not an additive. And I love, in fact, the name of your organization, Eco Shift, which also suggests exactly what has to do, what all of the research tells us, what good quality programs do, which is allow for the opportunity of individual choice, which means that when the consumer comes to buy a permit, they have the capacity to make a choice. Should they choose not, they may have to pay a higher fee, or they may choose, in fact, to get a reduction. It's incentivized, and this is a really important thing that allows for an effective and successful program to happen. So what's exciting for me, and what I want to make sure and emphasize with you guys is let's try really hard to make the shift, to think about this not as an additive or an addition, but instead as an incentive to get a discount. And we are incentivizing a connection to our environment instead of making it plus more. And I think this is a really important part of the moment that we have to do and what's happening across the United States. And when we look at Europe and we look at transition movements across the world, this is what's happening already. And all the research tells us that this kind of incentivized process is exactly what makes these kinds of programs effective. My only concern, of course, is when you choose to pay the fee, it's kind of like local carbon offsetting. Sad face. However, still, those fees can then be used to encourage other kinds of discounts in other areas, improve transportation, and barbecue, I don't know. But the point is that this is really exciting. And from all the research that I do, from all the kinds of things that I've been looking at, this is the way to go. It's very exciting.
Thank you for your comments.
Let's make sure Ms. Rowe gets a copy of the plan so she can include that in her dissertation. Excellent. No PhD left behind.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Well, my name is Gabriel, and I'm here with Nancy, and I think all the work that Nancy have been doing, it's a lot of like courage, coming here, and also thanks to Ms. Rowe.
Could you step up just a little closer to the microphone? Thank you.
Oh, and thanks to Ms. Rowe coming here, supporting the climate change and all that. Because I think like climate change is really, really like something we have to see, because this is our planet. We have to take care of it, and we have to do something like that will benefit in the future, Because like I know like I've seen a lot of people, well, there's like almost the whole world, like they care too much about like having a lot. And I don't know, like here my mom and I and my brother, we just have like a little room living, and we appreciate life. We want to help our community. We want to make changes and all that. And we don't need to have all this fancy stuff and all this technology stuff. Even though I only have my like this phone, old phone and all that, and still I appreciate life. I appreciate all the stuff I have. And I don't understand those people that, like, with this fancy phone and I don't know, like, all day texting out here, like, wasting life, doing nothing. Like, I don't understand that, you know? And that's why I believe that we should do something with our planet, protect it, and leave it, you know? And not just destroy it and don't care about others and all that stuff. We should care about everybody, you know? Like, work unite, like the United States united, it's not really united anymore. I think it's like mostly like each person caring about them, about like having more and more and more and more, and until like in the end there's none, and the world might be destroyed, and I don't know. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Hello, I'm Nancy Falstick. Again, I'm a parent and concerned community member and a local educator. I want to urge the council to adopt this ordinance for the Carbon Fund program now. I don't see why we would question bringing clean energy. We need to remember that climate change will cost more than clean energy. It already is. I have family in Massachusetts who are buried under 7 feet of snow while we're having 70s and 80s degrees in the winter here, not to mention the lack of water. The situation's extremely serious. And I want to see everybody in our community informed and educated and moving to action. And so that's the goal that I have taken on. And I'm here to help the council. I'm here to help the community. People need to understand the potential impacts that we're looking at. And what you might think about if you've heard, oh, it's 1 degree change so far. Well, think about if you have a fever of 1 degree, you're sick. You're not normal. And what do? You stop your normal activity. You need to recover. The Earth has a fever of only 1 degree, and it has thrown so many things off balance already. I have a 6-year-old daughter. She could be alive in 2100 when the route that we're on is to head to 8 to 10 degrees of warming. This will make much of the Earth uninhabitable. We're going to see violence increasing as people starve, as people run out of water. You know, the Pentagon is studying climate change because they understand this is like a #1 security threat. So I, again, want you to think about why wouldn't we do the right thing? You know, some people say it's too late to take action, but I say why not take action now and make the air cleaner for the people who are alive now? Asthma rates are astronomical. Reducing pollution is a good thing. Creating jobs through clean energy is a good thing. To me, the worst part of this crisis is that the people who have done the least to contribute to climate change are already suffering the most from it and will continue to. You know, we need to do the right thing and correct the wrongs of the past and come together as a community, which will improve our lives now tremendously. Everybody can come on board. We can face problems and solve them together. And again, I want to urge people to encourage students to enter the contest. The students can lead the way of getting educated, educate their families and the community, and I want to reward them for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name's Barbara Anders, and I'm embarrassed to say that I haven't been in these chambers for, 25 years. I used to be active when Dennis Osmer and, I guess he's been in and out. But at that time, I would have to say that Watsonville was not very progressive at all. And Nancy urged me to come to this meeting because she said, oh yes, they are now. So I would have to say that I'm very encouraged by what I've heard here tonight, especially with the water management stuff. And I'm very excited and very encouraged, and I'll become more active now. So I would encourage you as well to go ahead and go forth with this. It sounds like a good start. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Will Selden. I'm the Vice President of Sales at North Star Biofuels here in Watsonville. On behalf of our team, we fully support the climate action plan the city's put forth, but I'd like to have the City Council consider the use of low carbon fuels as part of the strategy for the carbon reduction plan. So, and thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rebecca Schifrin. I'm new to Watsonville. I've been here about a year and a half, and it's my first meeting. I'm very impressed. I read the report, and one of the things that I found missing from my vision of how things can go forward is a kind of relation to the general citizenry, a commitment to keep the public informed and connect with neighborhoods or connect with different constituencies in Watsonville so that there's a buy-in from the general citizenry. There's so many things that with this issue depend on individual choice and individual decisions. What kind of car are you going to ride in? How are you going to heat your house? Are we going to push forward with rail? So many things that community gardens that people in neighborhoods can become more involved with. And I think a decision like this, this is so profound in so many ways of how we're going to change, as the young gentleman said, what our priorities are in our individual lives, that to do it in a chamber like this is fine, but how do we pull the community into it in a way that's meaningful to us? So I would like to see that in the report or the plan, and maybe that's something to think about as we move forward. We need a buy-in on a really profound level with this kind of change that really is required of all of us to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dobie Jenkins, and I'm a member of your Planning Commission, having been appointed by Councilman Hurst and living in District 3. And I thought I'd join all the others to enthusiastically endorse this proposal, this plan, and the fund before you this evening. I'd also like to make a number of observations. I happen to live in a solar powered home. And this is in solar technology that was installed perhaps the better part of 14 years ago. And the panels that I have on my home are approximately 1/2 to maybe 1/3 as efficient as new panels. My electric bill, and I live in a 1,600 square foot home, my electric bill averages around $11 a month. Now, of that $11, about 87 to 93 cents represents generation. $8 of it is transmission and distribution. And if any of you know anything about transmission and distribution of electricity, there's a great deal of wastage in the current system of transmitting electric energy in the United States. And so that's an area where an efficiency has yet to be adopted. Now, every one of you is absolutely correct. It's going to cost those who choose not to take advantage of the incentives, it's going to cost them a little bit. But this is but the latest step in a half a dozen steps that this community has made since I've lived here, which is about 13 years, starting out with the decision to join with Wetlands Watch, Watsonville Wetland Watch, and preserve the wetlands in this community. And then the city decided to develop paths along those wetlands. And each of you know how popular those paths are. And the city then adopted an extensive trails network plan a couple of years ago, I believe it was, to add 33 miles to the 6 miles of existing plans. This is very ambitious, but this will make this a great walking, hiking, cycling situation here in the South County. The other steps that you've taken, well, this is the latest in a whole group of progressive steps you've taken to make Watsonville a more desirable, a more attractive community to live in. And it will cost some elements, some developers, something. But I suspect you're going to find a lot of them who'll say, gee, I can save money by doing these things, and I can save money right away on this. About just half a minute, about cars. I have a hybrid vehicle. It turns off. If I stop, it turns off at about 15 or 20 seconds. So it just goes back to electricity. The gasoline engine goes off. I get 53 miles to the gallon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Londa Rosebra. I live on Miles Lane in Rebecca's district. And I'm not exactly sure what I want to say, what I'm going to say. I know what I feel is that I'm really excited that Watsonville is taking this step. It's not the biggest step, but it's a great step. My family and I moved here about 14 years ago because it was affordable for us to raise a family here. And we wanted to let our kids grow up in a place where there was clean air and places where we could walk around the city. We would bike a lot. We would bike to school when the kids were in elementary school, but it wasn't exactly safe. So I'm so excited to see the component about bike lanes. Like, wow, we really needed that. The idea that people will be encouraged to use transportation that doesn't cause harm is fantastic. I love that. I have a couple of concerns, I guess, or questions about what might happen in the future. And I think it's great that the plan is going to be looked at over time, little by little, and improved upon as things appear that need to be taken care of. So I definitely encourage the City Council to adopt the plan and the ordinance. As several people have said, it's a great idea that something is going to be, has a built-in funding component, because we see things go off, great ideas go off the rails all the time because where's the money going to come from? So my concern is regarding the funding. It sounds like it's only going to be funded through new building or changing existing structures. And I guess I have to agree with Councilmember Dutra, disagree with Councilmember Dutra, because I see a lot of empty buildings around Watsonville. So I'm not seeing, that I'm not one of those residents who wants more building. I want to see the buildings that are empty get filled. So, something that would incentivize people to do that, I think would be really helpful. And let's use what we already have. I think that's a big component of sustainability. When I read to my son, who's 16 years old, a summary that Nancy put together about the plan, he was floored by the estimates of potential temperature increases, because he'll be alive in that time, hopefully. So he was actually motivated to come here tonight, which none of us have ever been to a council meeting. So this is a really important issue to us, and I'm glad that you're considering it, and I hope that you'll adopt it.
Thank you.
Buenas noches. Mi nombre es Ernestina Saldaña y estoy aquí para invitarlos a que tomen un momento y piensen en el futuro de nuestros hijos, de mis nietos, y adopten este programa que está ahorita en la ciudad revisando. Mi opinión es que este programa todavía no es completo, todavía le falta mucho más para poder asegurar que vamos a existir aquí, la próxima generación. Desgraciadamente, el clima, los cambios en el clima son tan intensos, tan agresivos, que si no hacemos algo que sea realmente radical en este momento, o a menos que tengamos manera de viajar a otro planeta, no vamos a tener un futuro como humanidad. Una de las cosas que yo quiero sugerir que se añadan a este plan es que haya distribución gratuita de barriles para coleccionar lluvia y que de esa manera pueda también incrementarse los jardines individuales, no nada más los jardines comunales. Pienso también que esto va a crear un nuevo grado de oportunidades de trabajo para nuestros jóvenes y que debemos también tener la visión de preparar a los jóvenes para que puedan ocupar esos puestos que se van a abrir. Entonces quisiera recomendar también que de alguna manera el concilio se pusiera de acuerdo con el Cabrillo College o con la universidad o con los dos, para que puedan crear tecnologías de las turbinas aerolíticas o para producir paneles solares, para producir e instalar los paneles solares, de tal manera que esa fuente de trabajo quede también en nuestra comunidad y de esa manera ayudarnos también a salir más pronto y que sea más accesible y más afordable para la comunidad. Otra de las cosas que quiero hacer hincapié en este momento, sobre todo ya que usted está aquí presente, señor Dutra, es que se proteja agresivamente el transporte público en nuestra ciudad. Ahorita con los cambios que se está viendo, se están pensando el metro, es muy importante, sobre todo en nuestra comunidad, que tengamos acceso a transporte público, porque tal como lo dijo la señora Rebeca García, si quitamos esos transportes, lo que vamos a tener son carros que ya no sirven, porque es lo único que mi familia podría afordar. Entonces, ese carro va a ser una fuente más de contaminación, cuando en este momento yo puedo estar usando el camión, pero si se me obliga de otra manera, tengo que moverme también. Hay que ir a trabajar, hay que ir a la escuela. Si no hay un camión que pasa por mi barrio, no me queda otra opción, más que llegar de una manera o de otra. No puedo montar a bicicleta, no puedo caminar hasta una milla y poder agarrar el camión, ¿verdad? También quisiera ver que haya una coordinación con los distritos escolares para que hablemos de esto en las escuelas. Yo estoy de voluntaria en una clase de 4º año y le pedí a la maestra que trajéramos la situación del cambio climático a los niños y los niños no sabían de qué estábamos hablando. Entonces, para que sea en todos los aspectos de nuestra vida el cambio que necesitamos, hay que empezar con la juventud y con la niñez. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Waiting for translation.
My name is Ernestina Saldaña, and I'm here to invite you that you take a moment and think about the future of our children, of my grandchildren, and you adopt this program that is in front of you and that you're revising today. My opinion is that this program is not complete. You need more to be able to ensure that we are going to exist in the future in our next generations. Unfortunately, the climate changes in climate are intense, aggressive, that if we don't do nothing that's radical, or that we have the means to move or to travel to another planet, we're not going to survive as humanity. I'd like for you to add that we have distribution of containers to collect rainwater. To also that we have individual gardens, not just community gardens. Also, this is going to create a new level of opportunity for our youth, and we need to have the vision to prepare our youth that can have these positions. I would like to recommend some way that the council, that you come with Cabrillo College or the universities, that you can create technologies that have turbines or solar panels, or to produce solar panels, to have to help the community and to get to that goal quicker. And so we have that available to the community. And I also like to talk about Mr. Dutra, that we go aggressively and protect the transportation in our community. They're thinking it's very important in our community that we have access to transportation. Like Rebecca Garcia said, if we remove that transportation, what we're going to have is more vehicles or more unoperable vehicles, and we need that transportation. That vehicle will be another means of pollution. And I need to move, and if I need to move, I have to have a vehicle, and that vehicle may not be useful, or I can't be in a bicycle, I can't walk, I need to have transportation. And I also would like to have a coordination with the school district, that we talk about this in the schools. I am a volunteer in a 4th grade class, and I asked the teacher to talk about climate action, and the kids didn't know what we were talking about. So that we have everything in our life and the changes that we need to do, we need to start with the youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more members of the public who would like to address us on this issue? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for more discussion. Councilmember Garcia.
One of our speakers talked about the use of low carbon fuels, and I like to refer back to page 31, where one of the recommendation is expand the use of biodiesel, especially as local supplies of biodiesel expand. Yesterday, Councilman Hurst and I had an opportunity to go visit North Star, where they produce biodiesel. And we were, at least I was, I think we both were amazed in terms of the process they use to produce this biodiesel, that has, I forgot the percentage, but a high percentage less petroleum than our regular diesel. And so we have it here in Watsonville, this opportunity. And so what I started thinking is that even though we have the recommendation to expand the use of biodiesel, we're not saying let's have our garbage trucks use it. We're not saying let's have our city vehicles use it. We're not saying let's work with the school districts to see if the school buses will use it. So that is something that I think needs to occur in our plan also.
And I respond to that. Our fleet in the city already uses biodiesel. And I believe that North Star already has a contract with the school district as well.
Other comments, Councilmember Hurst?
I'm encouraged to hear the public comments tonight, and I'm particularly encouraged to hear new people come to the council and see how progressive the council really is and how green we really want to be, because this is the need and the way of the future, and connecting people with community and community with other communities, and the secret of shopping locally and getting to know your neighbors and thinking locally. So we've done a lot about greenness in the community. It doesn't always show. You know, there's a whole row of solar panels on city rooftops that you can't necessarily see from the ground level, but they're there. And we've got an entire barrage of solar panels at our water treatment plant as well, and they're all over town, and they're growing. And there's more emphasis on greenness and the opportunity to reduce carbon, and this is an important step forward. It's not the do-all or end-all. It's just a piece of it, but it's an important piece, and we certainly need to move it forward. We've had a big emphasis on water recycling and low-flow toilets, but I know that there's still toilets out there in the community that have not been replaced, that are still not low flow, that are full flow toilets. I know that there's a lot of windows that have not been replaced with efficient windows in the community. There's a lot of houses that really could use a lot more insulation. We have replaced all the street lights in the city with LED lights, and it's a great big energy savings, and credit to our public works for doing such. We're working on lawn replacement. There's a program in place. You don't always see it, but some people are replacing their lawns. There's an emphasis on community gardens, and I know there's a lot of backyard gardens too. And there's a little bit of a focus on planting fruit trees as well. And not all the trees we could plant, not all of them have to be shade trees, or they could be dual purpose in that respect. So an emphasis on community gardens. We need to have more bike racks. This is a good thing to have in the community. More bike racks, more people on bikes. It needs to be a safer bikeway, though. And I'm particularly pleased of our accomplishments with the slough and the preservation of the wetlands and the access that we have made possible so that people can actually enjoy nature, get out of their house, maybe even meet some neighbors on the trail or people who you've never seen before. So we've got an electric charger downtown, and I see that it's quite often blocked with somebody's old jalopy that's not an electric car, but could be. And sometimes the glass is broken on it, and I don't know how well it works, but we should have some more of those opportunities. I see someone charging their vehicle in our parking structure once in a while, just plugging into an outlet. So there's a need and a desire by the people of this community to have a greener lifestyle, greener roofs, water conservation, rainwater harvesting. We've got lots of potential here, and I'm glad to hear the public tonight express that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Coffin-Gomez.
Well, I go ahead and moved for the resolution for EF and the ordinance introduction, and then my comment being, this is a working document. It's a foundation for the plan of our future, and it's strongly encouraged by council as well as our community. And I know that as we evolve, we'll incorporate more things with regarding the biodiesel and what we can do with that. It's another element, it's another chapter that we can go ahead and move forward with as we revisit this. And this document is a moving and evolving document for this community. So there's my support for this motion.
So that was a motion?
That was a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, second motion and a second. Councilmember Dutra.
Just comment. Thanks. I just want to say I am very green, and I hope it doesn't come off that I wasn't. When I was talking about development, I was talking about homes, and I maybe should have clarified that. We do have a lot of empty buildings that I do believe need to be filled with businesses. You know, a lot of people, when I left this community, a lot of my friends didn't come back because there is an opportunity. I hope there's opportunity for your son to have business, to work here in our community, and that we can create it and fill those empty businesses. I don't know under this plan, if someone were to get something like the Gottschalk's building or a big building, is that all, would this be exempt? How does that work?
Someone were to move into the Gottschalk's building and not do any additions, they would not be subject to this fee.
So anybody can get any big building, if they do the entire insides, there's not going to be any fee then?
Oh wait, commercial, sorry. You guys.
Yeah, there would, only single-family residential alterations are exempt. So if they did any remodeling inside, then they would be.
So businesses will be covered, they will be getting the fees, and you know, I think anything we can do to really move our community forward in cutting down our carbon is really important. Something, you know, when I go to a grocery store, I bring my reusable bags. And not only do I do that, but when I go to get some fruit or vegetables, I don't even use the plastic bags unless I really need to. So that's, you know, I'm pretty annoying like that. Another thing is if you get this in your mail, there's a phone number to call. This is junk mail. This is what creates your carbon footprint as well. There's a phone number on the side. We can all call and have them to stop this. Unless you're using this, we can have them stop delivering these papers to us. We also have to take personal responsibility for our planet. And I step forward. I don't even accept these anymore. I get really annoyed when I see this because this is a waste. We need to stop being wasteful. I don't even use the little plastic bags like I said at the grocery store. I don't like waste. And so I agree. This is a start. This plan that we're starting with, it's a working, living document that we can work with. It needs to be implemented. I also want to grow business, and green business is important. North Star is a great business that I also got to go through and see what they do here in the community, and I think it's going to be huge for Watsonville. And you know, transferring over to biofuel it's important. So Watsonville is ahead of the program in a lot of manners. And I also want to say, yes, this is great. It's a working document, but we also at home need to take it to a personal level and do our own personal work in getting things done. And just a simple telling them to stop delivering this to you, that's one step. So I encourage everybody to go green, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Other council comments? Councilmember Hurst.
Just a quick one. You know, we have made a lot of progress, as I stated before, and the plastic bag ban was a great big step forward. And the fact that we have the blue recycle carts, I remember there was objections to that. And they said, oh, no, that'll be too complicated. It'll be too costly. Where will I put it? Who will use it? You know, we've made a lot of progress, and so we're going to make some more. So I'm just appreciative of all the public comments and staff's work on this, because it has been a lot of work.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Let's have a vote.
Huffman Gomez,
Yes.
Dutra,
Happy birthday, Susie, yes.
Garcia, Hernandez,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
Yelisic.
Yes. Okay. Finish that, and we're moving on to our great topic of chromium-6. Compliance with the new state-mandated chromium-6 drinking water regulation. Yeah. It is.
15 minutes?
Yeah, 15 minutes. I don't know.
15 minutes.
Want a break?
Well, she gets a break at 9.
Okay, 5-minute break, 5 minutes. So we will call the meeting back to order, and we will start with new business, the compliance on the new state-mandated chromium-6 drinking water regulation. This is something that I think everybody will be wanting to understand and know about. We're going to have an agreement with the Corona Environmental Consulting Agency for a preliminary design of the treatment system. So we'll let our Public Works Director, Steve Palmisano, give us a staff report. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Belisic and members of the City Council. Steve Palmisano. I'm here with Bo Kaiser, Water Operations Supervisor for the city, and we have a double feature for you tonight. So we're going to start off, before we get into either of these, actually, I'm going to give a brief overview of our utilities enterprise funds. We have three enterprises, water, sewer, and solid waste, and combined, we have a $30 million annual budget among the three of these utilities. And so I want to give you a brief overview of each of them because they are critical infrastructure and services for our community. And a lot of people don't realize how many services the city provides. So this is for the community as well as the council. We provide safe, reliable, and affordable drinking water to over 65,000 customers in our community. As you can see from this map of our service area, we serve not only people within the city limits, but an area much larger, almost double the size of the city limits, well up into Corralitos and also west over to Sunset Beach. 90% of our water supply comes from the ground, and we have 12 drinking water wells, and we supply about 7 million gallons of water a day. We also maintain 6 storage reservoirs, and those hold about 10 million gallons. We have a very talented crew of water operations staff who runs the water system for our community, and they monitor the system day and night, 7 days a week, have electronic monitoring, and so someone is always on call to make sure our water is working well for us and is safe. We also have a water service team that maintains and repairs over 177 miles of water lines to our community. Our wastewater division treats that 7 million gallons of water a day, and we have a $90 million facility that takes care of that for us. We also maintain 175 miles of sewer and storm drain lines. Our service area includes the city of Watsonville as well as sanitation districts in Freedom, Salsa Puedes, and Shell Beach. We also manage and operate the recycled water facility that provides up to 3,000 acre-feet of agricultural irrigation water per day. Our solid waste division collects and manages our garbage, our recycling, and the green waste for the community. We also manage and operate our city-owned landfill. We sweep over 10,000 miles of streets per year to keep our community clean, and run the very well-used drop-off center on Harvest Drive where people can also drop off yard waste, recyclables, and garbage. So tonight we have a couple of very important critical financial issues that affect each of these utilities, and we've broken them up into two topics, the first being the state-mandated chromium-6 regulation, and Mr. Kaiser here is going to give you a presentation on that part, and when he's finished, then I'm going to come back and talk about long-term infrastructure funding for the three utilities and some very critical funding needs for those. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Kaiser, and you go ahead.
There you go. Thank you, Director Palmisano. Good evening, Mayor, council members, ladies and gentlemen. As the director mentioned, I'll be presenting to you the city's need for treatment design in response to recently adopted chromium-6 regulation. The city's water system has provided high-quality water to the area for over 80 years. Operations include water production, water distribution, and water quality testing. City staff regularly analyzes the quality of its water, which is regulated by the State Division of Drinking Water. The city has an excellent track record and maintains compliance with all drinking water standards year after year. Chromium-6 is a naturally occurring mineral and results from the deposits of chromium found in soils and rock. It is widespread throughout the Aroma Red Sands aquifer. This aquifer happens to account for the majority of the water that we source. In July 2014, the level of chromium-6 permitted in drinking water in California was set at 10 parts per billion. Prior to this limit, chromium-6 had been regulated under total chromium. The total chromium limit in California has been 50 parts per billion, a target the city has always met. It's worth noting that federally, the limit is 100 parts per billion. Despite already being half the federal limit, the state reduced its allowance of chromium-6 to 10. The red dots on this map indicate the presence of chromium-6. As you can see, the city is not alone. The prevalence of chromium-6 throughout California is quite high. Up to now, the state has yet to set aside funding specifically for chromium-6 compliance. This unfunded mandate has been estimated to cost California water agencies upwards of $4 billion. The city has determined it will require $20 million in capital costs to reduce its levels of chromium-6 to acceptable limits. To put that in perspective, annual capital improvement funds for the water department are currently $500,000. After capital costs, it is expected that simply funding ongoing maintenance and operations of chromium-6 treatment will be $700,000. So what has the city been doing as a result of this new regulation? Over the last couple of years, the city has actively sought to educate, engage, and understand the complex issues behind chromium-6 regulation. Our staff reached out to several hundred water agencies and developed a coalition among water service providers. We traveled to Sacramento to meet with state drinking water officials, and from the beginning, we have worked with local and state legislators to ensure they understand the financial impact, the need for funding, and the need for time to implement the treatment. As many of you may recall, last February, the city approved a resolution stating just these points. In summary, the council and the city advocated for funding solutions, in particular for disadvantaged communities, campaigned for adequate time for treatment implementation, and urged the state to reconsider the economic impacts and the cost of compliance. With a lowered allowable chromium-6 limit, 79% of our production water will now be considered out of compliance. Again, to bring the city into compliance, the cost is estimated to be $20 million. So this brings us to today and why we're here. The city has made an extensive and commendable effort to get a handle on the chromium-6 regulation. At this point, the city needs outside help to achieve the next steps of both finding funding and treatment solutions. Nowhere else in the country has chromium-6 been regulated to this extent in drinking water. There are very few full-scale treatment systems for chromium-6 removal, and expertise in chromium-6 research and design is critical to our next steps. This past summer, staff requested and received statements of qualifications from firms experienced with water treatment facility design. Through this effort, the city identified Corona Environmental Consulting, as the most qualified firm in chromium-6 research. Corona has long been involved with chromium-6 issues and is recognized as a leader in the field. We're at a juncture now where we need to compete for scarce funding monies and work towards compliance. In order to be eligible for grant funding, developing plans and designs will almost certainly be prerequisites. In 2014, staff retained Corona with a minor contract. Results of this work have already positioned the city for grant consideration. By retaining the services of Corona, the city will aim to achieve notable tasks towards chromium-6 treatment. Two of the actions will be extensive water quality sampling and pilot testing at our impacted wells. These two phases alone will allow the city to choose an optimum, effective treatment technology. This contract will also include site-specific plans and exploration of ways of using existing city resources as pieces to the treatment solution. The site designs will put the city in a better position to be grant eligible. To reiterate, the city faces challenges and has identified steps to take. We need treatment, We need to initiate preliminary design and be on the road to shovel readiness. We need $20 million, and we need to explore all funding resources, including involvement with our integrated regional water management programs. We will continue to actively pursue funding opportunities at every level. So to staff's recommendation that the City Council adopt a resolution authorizing the City Manager Pro Tem to execute a contract with Corona Environmental Consulting for preliminary design of treatment systems necessary to comply with new state-mandated chromium-6 drinking water regulations in an amount not to exceed $526,520 and an appropriation from the Water Enterprise Fund for the same amount. Thank you.
Mayor?
Are we finished with this part of the presentation, or are you going to continue, or do you want questions now?
Well, it's up to you. We have it structured as one large presentation, so we can do that and do questions at the end, which may answer some of your questions, or we could do some questions now.
I think we better do some on chromium-6 right now.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what I was going to recommend.
Go ahead. Do you have a question now?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I see from your report that, in fact, this is a unfunded mandate. And so my question is there any pending legislation that will address the cost-benefit of chromium-6 treatment and the effect on disadvantaged cities such as Watsonville?
If you're asking if there are pending legislation to designate funding for this?
Well, any kind of legislation that would help us as a disadvantaged city.
There are existing structures to provide, say, low interest or forgiving loans. I'm not entirely aware of all of them, but for chromium-6, there's nothing specific. No.
This recommendation, as it's written, I just want to make sure I understand it well. It says chromium-6 drinking water regulations in the amount not to exceed $526,520 and an appropriation from the Water Enterprise Fund. You're not talking about additional monies. You're talking about taking it from the Water Enterprise Fund, correct? So we're not talking $1 million. Okay. Thank you. Just want to be sure. That's Councilmember Dutra.
Quick question, kind of being new around here. The $526,000 for a consultant, is that high? I mean, that seems like a lot of money for a consultant. I mean, I'm in the wrong business.
I think we all are.
The water industry could be very lucrative, I agree. But this money will cover costs for pilot testing. It'll cover costs for extensive water sampling. It'll cover costs for site designs, engineering designs. So we will be getting a lot of tangible product from this. Most importantly, we'll be able to be in a position to apply for grant funding. Without these site designs and without doing more rigorous pilot testing, we don't even know what type of treatment we need. So in order to know where we'll be going in the future with chromium-6 treatment, we need to have these things in place just to be eligible for grant funding that currently exists.
Is this just one of the steps to be eligible for grant funding? Is it also sometimes they want to see a certain amount of money in the bank, that you at least have half the project covered? This seems to be taking unless we have a lot we can spare, this seems to be kind of a large chunk.
It is a very large chunk, $20 million that we don't have too. So we're not the only city facing this crisis. But in our, in the effort that we've put forth up to this point, this is kind of the hand that we've been dealt and what we need to do to, seek funding for treatment.
In your professional expertise, do you think we will be successful in getting the grant money if we move forward with this?
I don't think I could answer that question very well. I'm fairly certain that without moving forward with this, we would not get grant funding.
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell me how much money's in the Water Enterprise Fund at this time?
I wanted to just answer a little bit more on Jimmy's question. Engineering typically is about 10% of the project cost. So what we're looking at really probably will be ultimately about $2 million in engineering and design costs for a $20 million project. So this really is just enough to get us in the door for the grant funding programs. And without it, as Bo said, we won't get anything. So we won't even be able to apply. So it's a critical step in moving forward in terms of compliance and demonstrating to the state that we are moving forward as well. So we need to show that we're designing a system and that we're on track in terms of coming into compliance with the new regulation. So does that help?
If it's a critical point, that's important to know because
it is, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
How much money is in the Water Enterprise Fund, approximately?
I think right now there's around 4 or 5 million. It's about 5 million, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Kaufman-Gomez.
Too bad we couldn't have a buddy system or a referral system so that if we refer them somewhere else and they get the contract, we can get a little bit to sort of shave the cost down on some sort of discount process. You know, it's how business can run somehow, especially for a $500,000 investment that we're doing. And it is an investment in our community here. The competitive advantage, would we have a competitive advantage of coming out the chute now and getting a plan in place prior to others that would help us with the benefit of applying for grants? I know that the water bond having passed, there is some money, but it's very limited. Would that help us be more competitive to get out front of others that are having to face the same problem with coming up with the funding sources once they've gone past their consultants?
Well, yes, it does make us more competitive in the fact that the prior work that we've done with Corona up to this point, we identified a treatment solution that is considered new technology, and there are grants available for new technology. In this case, chromium-6 is very new, and so part of the pilot testing that we will do, if we are able to move forward with this, is the state has favorably received our submission of new technology, and if we're able to demonstrate that it's successful, it's something that the state can share with other agencies, and at the same time, we will be the beneficiaries of considerable amount of money to implement this treatment, which would potentially cover the cost of 1 or 2 wells.
Well, doing a roadshow, if we can be the business model out there for the state, for all of the other communities, that will be advantageous in our part to make that investment happen. And I know that the selection process for this particular firm was a relationship we had, as well as where they stand on the head of the curve with regards to the chromium-6 solutions. Would that be about right with this firm that we're using?
Yeah. The vice president of this company has been in the chromium-6 game for close to 15 years. He is recognized as kind of a pioneer. He does presentations across the country on chromium-6. He's published in journals. So I feel fortunate that we've retained his services up to this point, and he's certainly considered an expert in the field, yes.
And I know that the investment, what makes it unique is we're going to be testing a specific well in a specific location, so we really can't use a lot of that knowledge with somebody else's well because of the criteria differences. But hopefully, in repetition, we'll be able to benefit from that, because I really want to make sure if we're the first ones up to the bat, coming up with a $500,000 project, that we can also get the conclusion to put the request in for funds as the one of the top half dozen or so, showing the state what interest we have and how ready we are to move forward once we do have the results in place. So being progressive rather than waiting along the outskirts of things, one, because of the liability, I believe that we have penalties if we don't do anything, if we bury our head in the sand over this matter, essentially. And two, that once the funds are out there, they're going to be out there for the first grabs, and I want to make sure we're putting ourselves in a position for the highest and best use of the funds first, if we can at all get there. That's my comments anyway.
Councilmember Hurst.
Thank you. Remind the council and the public how we got here with the parts per billion. The feds are at 100, the state was at 50, and now we're at 10. How did all that happen? Who did that to us?
Governor.
Well, it goes back to the early 90s and an incident with PG&E in a community called Hinckley, where there was some man-made chromium-6 that got into the drinking water, made a lot of people sick, and it was a bad thing. The levels of chromium-6 in that drinking water were thousands of times higher than what we have here. But from that point, there was an investigation to the prevalence of chromium-6 in drinking water, and it was looked at, I believe, across the country. California is a hotbed of chromium-6, not necessarily at levels that exceed the MCL 5 years ago, but the state studied it and spent about 10 years developing what's called a public health goal and then a maximum contaminant level. And they settled on 10 parts per billion. California is the only state in the nation that regulates chromium-6. As I mentioned, the federal limit is 100 parts per billion. The state's limit prior to that was 50. They've chosen 10. And now we need to choose, we can choose to comply with that. It's a long, convoluted story as to how we got there, and there's been a lot of public comment, but ultimately that's where we are now. So what gaps would you like filled in there?
Well, tell us why they're not helping out disadvantaged communities.
Well, it's a message that city staff brought to the office of the governor, to legislators in Sacramento. There's an association of California water agencies who delivered this message. The city passed that resolution. A lot of noise was made. A lot of efforts were put out there so that the economic impacts on disadvantaged communities were understood. I won't say it fell on deaf ears, but it did not produce anything to this point.
I do want to thank staff for trying to be proactive and talking with the governor and trying to work on behalf of the residents of Watsonville and trying to get some additional funding to address this issue. It is a big issue, and from what I understand, we'll be fined if we don't comply. So we're trying to be aggressive and get going on this because it's not going to go away. I'm sure if they ever come up with funding for communities such as ours, we'll be able to get a check. But I don't see it in the future at the moment, and yet I think that we need to go forward. Other comments? Councilmember Hernandez.
I was kind of looking at our friends that also are facing this issue, and I was kind of reading, which is Coachella and similar economically disadvantaged communities like Watsonville, and I was reading that they have the unfortunate set of circumstances where their consultant's costs is $15 million, and ours is $526. So it's a huge problem for them as well. But they're also looking at a project that's going to be over $100 million to fix theirs. So I'm not saying there's a good side to this, but we'd hate to be in their shoes, kind of.
One of the things that citizens have been talking about is the loan. The water fund, they had all this money, and They loaned the general fund the 4.6 million, but we have to remember that the city is going to repay that loan with interest, so it's not gone from the water fund, and eventually will come back. And that we do have the $500,000 right now in this water enterprise fund to fund this, so that's a positive thing, even though it's a lot of money. Other comments?
I just want to say also too, maybe to clarify, the chromium-6, kind of like what Felipe was saying, I think there's two, it could be created two ways, right? One way is naturally, and the other is like with the PG&E plant. And maybe Coachella, I think they're natural as well. So, I think we're lucky that it is the natural way and not the other way. So, I think
If it was the other way.
Yeah, if it was the other way, we're really
somebody though.
Yeah. But, so I think that if we want to look at a positive or try to get one out of here, I think looking at it that way as well. So,
Can we get a motion on this part?
Do you want public comment?
Oh, public comment, yes. Public input on this. Thank you. Anyone want to speak to address chromium-6? Seeing none, let's come back to council for...
I move to approve for the consultant.
We have a second by
Second.
Councilmember Kaufman Gomez. So let's do a roll call on this part.
Kaufman Gomez,
Yes.
Dutra,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
Bielisich.
Yes, and so now we'll move on to item F with another presentation.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Now, part two, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the city's aging infrastructure and some of the challenges we're facing. And to set the stage, I want you to know we're not alone. The American Water Works Association did a study, and it showed that pretty much every community in the nation is facing a similar problem of aging water and sewer lines that need to be replaced now. And that cost of that nationwide is about $1.5 trillion. So it's huge. It's a national issue. Over half of the city's water and sewer lines are over 50 years old. This map shows in red all of the water lines that are greater than 50 years old. And so our system is aging, and there are a lot of factors that go into how long a water line will last, including the type of material used in the pipes, as well as the soil types and many other features. But the reality is many of these pipes are coming to the end of their useful life. And one very recent example of this is a major water line break that happened 4 nights ago, 11 p.m. at our Municipal Services Center. A 12-inch water line broke in the middle of the night. You can see here what's circled is that the force of the water was so strong it lifted the concrete 6 inches high. And that's what you're seeing there. The entire MSC yard was flooded. The flood then went through the offices at MSC like a river, and then out onto Harvest Drive, creating a lake on Harvest Drive at that time. And so it was really a really big disaster. We lost 1.4 million gallons of water in this just one break. Huge amount of water. And this is a picture of the pipe that broke that our crew is currently repairing. But you can see about a 10-foot long section of pipe just simply broke off, and that created a very large opening for this water to come out. And so this, unfortunately, is typical of what we see. This is what a water break looks like in the daytime in a residential area, and we've had historically claims against the city for flooding damages for these kinds of breaks. And again, you can see just large chunks of pipe will come off. So repairing these water lines and maintaining these lines is very labor intensive. It's very technical. It's very expensive. Here's another example of another way pipes are damaged over time. This is because of the types of soils we have in Watsonville. And so about 15 years ago, we realized this was a problem and started taking measures to wrap the pipes, and now we're even taking a new measure to use different types of pipe that are coated with epoxy and zinc to prevent that type of corrosion from happening. But far too many of our water system is built with the old kinds of pipes, and they are breaking, and some of those are only 30 years old. This is a map showing all of the water breaks in our community over the last several years. It's kind of astounding when you really look at it. So we are getting to the point in needing to manage our infrastructure where it's just becoming so much more expensive to deal with emergencies rather than doing planned infrastructure. When you have emergencies, you have crews on overtime, you're dealing with much more expensive procedures in terms of the way we have to handle and repair the breaks. And so it's just much more cost effective to plan out and in an orderly way to rebuild and replace these aging pipes. Currently, we are on a schedule of doing about, based on the current revenue we have, doing about 1 mile per year of waterline replacement. At this rate, it's going to take us 177 years to replace all of our water lines. And as you can see from all those stars on that map, it's not going to work. We have to figure out a way to triple or quadruple the rate at which we are replacing our waterline pipes. And so this will cost, $2 to $3 million a year to achieve that level of maintenance. And so this is one of the reasons we need to look at a rate study. In addition to the water lines, our wells, many of our wells, half our wells are over 50 years old. This is a picture of well 1, which is 85 years old. And many of our other infrastructures and reservoirs are also very, very old. The wastewater treatment plant, the original part of the plant was built in 1960, and as I mentioned, half our sewer lines are also over 50 years old. We also have some significant infrastructure projects coming up to maintain our facility. One of those is we use a generator. One of the byproducts of wastewater treatment is that we produce methane gas, and we have a generator that is 30 years old that burns that gas and actually supplies 90% of the energy needed to run the entire wastewater facility. So it saves us a tremendous amount of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. But that 30-year-old piece of equipment is coming to the end of its life as well, and that's an $8 million project to replace that. So we need to start planning ahead for that. On the solid waste front, our landfill is coming to the end of its life. 3 to 4 years from now, we'll need to close that landfill, and that's about a $5 million project. Once we close our landfill, the plan is to send our waste to Marina. We have a contract in place with that landfill there, but it's going to be further away, and it's going to cost more to take the garbage there. So that's another piece of planning that we need to do. So here's the really good news slide of the evening. This is a summary of all of the different pieces of infrastructure we just talked about. Chromium-6, at the bottom there, $20 million. Water infrastructure improvements, if we do $3 million a year, $15 million. The sewer infrastructure improvements, we have $2 million a year, but in 2018 we have the replacement of the generator. And then the solid waste fund, in 2018, 2019, we have the closure of the landfill. So all of these combined is a capital project cost of $65 million that we as a community are going to need to really struggle with and look at options for funding. Of course, the city is very aggressive when it comes to going for grant funding, and we will absolutely scour the earth in terms of looking for any opportunities to find grants for both Chromium-6 and infrastructure improvement projects. But those projects are limited, and those programs are limited. Even with the new water bond, a lot of the water bond funding was pre-allocated to the Delta and to Southern California. There really is not that much money available for the Central Coast, which was something we lobbied for as well throughout the entire process. But it is what it is. And one of the pieces that's very important in terms of going for low interest loans from the state, or even going for bonds to sell bonds to fund these projects, is that we must show that the city is in good financial health. And that's another very important reason to do a rate study, so we can make sure our revenues are enough to demonstrate that we can, just as you go for a mortgage, you have to demonstrate to the bank you can pay them back. And the state's the very same way. They need to see that we have the revenues to pay back these low interest loans, or they're not going to give them to us. So the rate study, why do the rate study? Well, $65 million in capital projects is one of the big reasons. And also, again, for Chrome 6, to show that we are moving forward with the state, to show that we have funding in place as well as designs in place. We need to show the state both are happening. We have not completed a rate study since 2010, and the standard of the industry is to do one about every 5 years. And clearly, the recent rate increases we've had have not been enough to generate the revenue to fund these large capital projects. So it's another reason we need to look at this. We are recommending to use a consultant for this because it is a specialized field and because our financial staff is absolutely tied up in integrating and bringing on board our new financial system. We have no staff capacity whatsoever to take on this additional work, which is very time-consuming and very specialized. In addition, there are legal requirements, and we need to make sure any rates we propose are in compliance with Proposition 218, which regulates how rates are implemented. We did a request for qualifications for a number of firms across the state, and finance and public works staff together ranked our proposals, and Raftellus is by far was our clear selection. I also had a number of personal connections in the water industry that had used them and recommended them, so they came highly recommended. So the scope of work will include completing a soft cost of service analysis, a rate study. Raftellus will create a number of options for the council to consider, and then we would have a workshop to talk about the various options and funding mechanisms available for us. Then they would make sure we were in compliance with the state regulations, provide support for a public hearing, and a final report. One thing I wanted to also note is our very lean staffing levels, and this is true for each of the 3 utilities. I'm just showing water here. We did number of staffing per 1,000 water accounts. Watsonville is 1.5 to 2.5 times lower in its staffing levels as compared to other agencies. And we have a very hardworking staff, and I actually wanted to recognize our staff here. Tom Sharp has worked hard on this. And Gabe Gordo has also worked very hard on this, and Steve Hernandez in the back. All of these guys have been involved in preliminary work on both Chrome 6 and the rate study. And Sanjay Gur is the consultant we are recommending hiring, and he is here to answer questions for you. So one last point I wanted to make is our rates are also the very lowest in the region. About half compared to most of the other agencies around us. And so this is something else that we've always been very proud of. And I do know that all of the other water agencies and utility agencies in the areas have planned rate increases of around 10% a year or more for the next several years. And so even if we do a rate increase, we're still going to be at the bottom of this chart. And that's the note that I think is really important, because we do have a lower income community, and so there's a reason our rates are the lowest. We've always been very responsible about that and very careful about that, and we will continue to hold that. And so our recommendation is to approve a consultant and appropriation for this contract.
Well, now that you've given us gloom and doom, let's hear from comments from the council. Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
I have a few questions for you. The $35 million you're after, are you looking at increasing staff that we have? Because obviously you've shown us what the ratio of the staff would be. Consultants, are they going to be brought in? Are they going to be independent contractors that are going to be coming in for some of this, the funds coming in as a result of the increases? Where is the money and how is it going to be? I mean, I can see the projects, but when it comes to the resource, are we bringing the materials in and our staff are going to put it in? Are we bringing in contractors to do the work? How's this going to be conducted?
That's a great question. And one of the things we're looking at is evaluating what's going to be the most cost-effective solution. Mm-hmm. And so we are comparing contractor prices versus in-house prices for doing the water line replacement work in particular. And so we will continue to evaluate that. And partly it depends on what kind of rate structure the council ends up approving. And based on that, we will develop a budget and a plan. So the initial look is that it looks like it might be more cost effective to use additional in-house staff. Also taking on additional projects. We are so lean. In order to take on these large additional capital projects, it is likely we will also need to have some additional staff on hand to just manage those projects because we're at capacity as it is.
Because one of the things that we need to factor is the $600,000 project and a 100% union contract. And we need to factor in that the cost of the budget for some of these projects, if they exceed 600, will cost us more money. So I want to carefully monitor what we're doing for anything that's going to exceed, that's going to put us in that position that these projects will then increase in terms of what our cost effectiveness would be for them. The let's say it was a we've got a 35 million. If that turn on like a light switch, $35 million. What is that financial impact that we're going to see with the consumer on that for that bill to be given to them from what they're getting today to $35 million over the course of the allocation here?
Well, that would be something that we would have to uncover through the rate study. I don't have that information right now. I don't even have a ballpark because it's such a big jump. And it would also depend on how we would finance it. I mean, one of the options, probably one of the very likely options, is one of these low interest loans from the state or doing some bonding, which would spread the cost out over 20 years or so. And so that would, we would have a payment for that, but we wouldn't be like paying cash up front for all of it. I don't see that happening.
Well, if Ezekiel was here, I'd say make sure that our interest rate is based off of the LAIF of our return, which is about 1/4%, and then I would be very happy to see being able to finance by those means, which would be a lot more cost effective for us. A lot of money. We have a 7% rate hike coming up here shortly. We do have another.
About that, yeah.
Okay, so we have one coming in. We're going to be looking at hiring a consultant for about $100,000 to evaluate the next or the future, maybe the 5 years out or so, and what this is, and also the resources with everybody being efficient. The water conservation, so the bills aren't as high, so you don't have the revenue coming in. You have more of the recycle, so the garbage containers are smaller, so we're generating less source of income as a result to cover a lot of these expenses. So the public needs to be aware that while we've done what we possibly can do to be as conservative as we possibly can, it's also affected counterintuitively with the funds to be able to do more of our infrastructure investing. So that is another thing that we need to make sure we relay to the community why we need this now and what's caused us to get to some of this position we're in now. Thank you.
Let's see, Councilmember Dutra.
When was the last time you did an increase? Was it 5 years ago? Is that what yours?
No, our last increase was last June 1.
Is that the 7%?
It was about 7%.
When was it before the 7%?
The year before.
Oh, so you've been increasing annually.
We've been doing, we have done, when we came to council last time, it was 2012, and we proposed a 5-year rate increase. And so we're sort of just about into the 3rd year of that, and we're realizing it's not enough to fund these large projects. So that's why we have come back early and not wait till the end of that.
So you're into the 5 years, you're 2 years into it?
2 years coming on 3rd. July 1 this year will be the 3rd year.
And when you pitched the whatever it was, 7%, what did you pitch it as? What were you telling the people that was going to cover?
It was it was going to cover our operational and maintenance cost and some infrastructure cost. And
did you promise them new pipes, and was that included in it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because we're going back and asking. I mean, from what I can see, that's the biggest thing. We have a big issue with the busting pipes.
We did, and unfortunately, the revenue didn't pan out like we had hoped it would because of so much water conservation happening.
So we've got to go back and now resell it.
Yeah.
And do you have an idea of what you think we're going to have to resell it at?
I don't know yet. I think it's too soon to tell. And also our consultant is going to prepare a number of 3 different options for the council to consider. And so I think we'll have a suite of alternatives of how much infrastructure we want to fund, and you'll have a decision to make around that.
You had a slide that's at $100. What was that? 100? One of the last slides, maybe? Right there.
Oh, that's our current That's basically the current combined rate, and this is broken up into water, sewer, and garbage.
So the average person pays
It's
$100.
about $100 a month currently.
I just wanted to make one point that of the 35 million we're looking for, 20 of it is just for Chrome 6, which is a new development. So even if we were looking at this apples to apples from rate increases from 5 years ago to now, that wasn't even near why we need to go after what we're looking for the evaluation process now.
Absolutely.
Right, and I think the Chromium 6 really, I mean, 20 million to that is, it's a substantial number. You know, my biggest concern is that we're gonna have to go resell this to the people first off, which it's always gonna be something hard to do. We're raising rates, and you know, we just increased sales taxes, so I'm sure, you know, people, here we come again, asking for more money, and they want to see something in return.
Mm-hmm.
So my biggest thing is going to be, and I've been saying this from day one, is, you know, you showed us the slide where we're only achieving 1 mile per year, and it's going to take us 177 years to even get anywhere. I need our men and women back to work 5 days a week so that we can be achieving 3 miles. And if we're going to be asking people for a rate increase, they need to see that we're really working at that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be one of my almost demands, is saying, you know, because we're 4 days a week, right? Is that how we're working? So that in order to get to those numbers, we're going to need people working. So I'm just going to lay that out now. That's really important to me. Okay. So, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Garcia.
You mentioned, well, I guess in this chart, that we have the lowest rates, and in part, you've been very sensitive because we have a high rate of low-income families. And so I'm just curious in terms of the poverty level is, to my knowledge, 25,250 for a family of 4. And so I'm curious how many families, or what is the percentage of families in Watsonville that actually fall in this level? And as Jimmy said, we just passed a sales tax increase that it's going to impact these families again. And it doesn't seem that they really can afford another increase. And so my question is, can there be a sliding scale?
That's a very good question, and it's one that is comes up every time we have a rate increase. And the short answer is no, and the reason is under Proposition 218, in order to have a sliding scale, you would need to have one group subsidize another group, essentially. One group of ratepayers subsidize another, and under Proposition 218, that's not legal. And so everybody has to pay for the services equally, and that's just the way the law is structured, and so we don't have any ability to provide a sliding scale or a poverty level supplement. There was, as we saw at a council meeting or two ago, there are grants through the state that help people pay their water bills, but that has to be completely separate from the way the rate is structured.
And do you have any indication in terms of what percentage of our families are in that poverty rate?
I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I was not able to find that, but I do know that we have, we do meet the criteria as an economically disadvantaged community by the state of California. So that means 80% of our homes are below a certain income level of, I think, 44,000 is the median. So 80, yeah, and so we meet a criteria of that. So it's a little bit different than the poverty level, but it does indicate that we are, among all cities in California, disadvantaged. So.
Thank you.
So we're considered about median 44,000? Because I got confused. I remember I sat during a city council meeting once, and we were compared to Livermore to their median. So I was just a little so are we? Oh, okay.
We're 80% below the median.
Okay.
So whatever that number is. But our per capita income is about $14,000 per year. I know that number.
Yeah, this all information is available in the census, and our median income is 70% of the Santa Cruz median income, and that's our officially adopted median income figure for all our calculations. So whatever Santa Cruz declares to be its median income, we're 70% of that. And not only do we have grants in the community for utilities, but anybody who's eligible for Section 8 or any other form of affordable housing program, of which we have lots in Watsonville, their share of the rent is based on their utility portion. So they're not required to pay more than a third of their income in rent, including utilities. So that's how their rent is calculated. So the utilities is part of their third of their income. So that's how all our affordable housing programs work. So that just means they pay less rent in order to afford the utilities, but the two combined do not exceed 30% of their income.
Who covers the difference? The county? Did they write the city a check?
Right. Those are affordable housing programs that have received tax credits and other benefits. And so a family that may be paying, whether it's Section 8 or affordable housing, any of the affordable housing units in the city, the way they work, the way that the affordable housing works is you have to dedicate as a family 30% of the household income to rent and utilities combined. And so since the utilities are fixed, the rent is the part that shrinks in order for that to happen. And whether it's a housing authority or whatever program is sponsoring that affordable housing project pays the difference in rent.
But because we have many families, 2-3 families living in a household, they're not all Section 8 and they're not all in affordable housing.
But there are also 3 families sharing one
Right.
utility bill. And I'm not advocating for that, but I am saying that at least where it comes to affordable housing, which is we have hundreds and hundreds of units in town, their utilities are a consideration in their rent payment. And all of the Section 8 also. And we do have over 1,000 Section 8 vouchers here.
But do we get that money back? That's what I'm saying. If it's
They pay the utilities in full. The rent is subsidized by nonprofit.
But the utilities are paid in full.
Right, and
Okay.
that's what I'm saying. It's the rent that shrinks and utilities get paid in full.
Okay.
Councilmember Hurst.
Could we go back to that slide with the workforce in the trench, fixing the broken pipe?
Yeah. That one?
That one's fine. You know, when all these dollars start to add up, certainly. Million here, million there, turns into real money. These guys aren't just working 36 hours a week. This is a tough, dangerous, dark, dirty job down in a ditch. There's danger associated with this. It's not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody wants to be called out in the middle of the night and put down in a muddy hole with danger of cave-in. Anything could happen. Somebody could drive their car into the ditch. So this is not just a job for everybody. It's a specialized occupation in that regard, and you got to have a lot of grit to do it. So my point is, it doesn't matter how much you conserve or cut back in your water, if the pipe doesn't work, it doesn't matter. You got to have the pipe to work all the time. And these guys are the ones who make it happen.
Thank you for acknowledging them. They're an amazing team.
Other comments? Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
I know as a result of doing the consulting work on figuring out what to do with the rate determination, have you considered or perhaps a possibility of considering the difference between the residential and the commercial rate structure? I don't know if that's been part of a study that's been done for the utility costs in the past.
Yeah, we'll be looking at that.
Other comments from council? Councilmember Dutra.
Have you thought of or considered the 95,000, maybe bringing someone on full time? I mean, that sounds like that would be dedicating their time as an employee to deal with this, and even, probably even for cheaper.
It's a very specialized field, and I don't think we would be able to find somebody to do this for us for that. It's one of the things that's really important is compliance with Prop 218, and so it's very specific about the way you do your report, where you show how the costs are associated with the benefits and how that is all equitable among the different ratepayers and users. And so it's very complicated because we have the different tiers of water use, so it gets more expensive the more you use the water. And there's a number of factors that it would be really difficult to find somebody to do this study for us. I know it does sound like a lot of money, but in terms of running a $30 million budget, it actually is, for something we do every 5 years, I think it's a very worthwhile investment. One of the dangers of not doing this study correctly is that you then become vulnerable to lawsuits, and we have seen that happen across the state where the rate structures were not in compliance with Prop 218. Somebody finds it, identifies it, and goes after the city and wins, and it's very expensive for the city. You have to pay back a lot of money if it wasn't structured properly, and in the end, it's a big risk. So
you pay to get it done right. That's
absolutely.
Yeah, you get what you pay for. Yep.
Do you think at some point that we'd be able to train in-house for future things? I mean, you have a consultant now, but at some point.
It's a possibility. I mean, the problem is it's something that we would only do about every 5 years, and so it's not a skill set that would be that useful to train because we only use it for a 6-month period every 5 years, and then things change, laws change, and to keep up on all of that, it's probably more cost effective to just hire a regular financial person and do a generalist to do our budget and a financial analyst and hire the consultant for this specialty work. That's really why we hire consultants, is because it's not worth the effort to train them because they don't get used enough on a regular basis.
I think listening to Councilmember Dutra, one of the things that I have a concern about is that we did pass the 5% increase. And that was a good thing. It took a lot of effort, and we said, okay, we're going to do this. And then we tell people, don't use water. We need to conserve. You have to conserve. Don't use water. And so residents did cut back 15 to 20%. And now we're saying, you know what? You cut back too much. And although you didn't use water, now we need to raise the rates. I mean, it's kind of comical in some aspects, but yet not when you're talking about someone who's trying to do the right thing, trying to save resources, trying to say, okay, the rates went up. Gosh, now I have to cut back. Okay, I did it. And now I'm being penalized again because we have to raise our rates. I mean, it's very difficult for the public to understand that piece. Councilmember Hernandez, sorry.
First I want to commend the staff from Public Works. A lot of our staffers are always doing more with less. So I want to commend you guys and all the work that you guys do. There's as a city, I think eventually we are going to have to invest in our infrastructure and look at this issue. We can't wait for things to break and then fix them. It's not the most cost-effective way to do things, I think. If we look at a cost-benefit analysis, it's better to just triage our pipes and figure out what needs to be fixed and fix it one shot, as opposed to just tearing down and fixing what breaks as it goes. If we know pipes are over 80 years old, we know they're going to end up like this on the picture. So I think at some point we are going to have to do this, and it's no better time than now.
Are these water pipes, sewer pipes, or both?
Those are water.
Water. So do you have sewer pipes doing the same thing?
Not as dramatically because they're not under pressure, but yeah, they do start deteriorating over time.
So the priority is water pipes?
Oh, yeah.
Other questions from council? From the public, do we have input from the public? Anyone would want to address water issues? Anybody have some good solutions? What are we supposed to do here?
Ratepayers, we need to step forward.
Seeing no public input, back for council for discussion or a possible motion.
I'll move for the motion because I know that we need to do this for the investment purposes and start this cost-effective way. So I'll move the motion forward.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councilmember Hurst?
I'm sorry, the public, well, we did have a public hearing. You know, there was an opportunity for the public to comment, and I'm sure they'll comment some more. But they missed a great opportunity to get an education here this evening, see the rate structures of other municipalities and the comparison, and understand the scope and depth of the problem. And some of these problems are pretty deep. So we'll hear from them, I'm sure, but you've already got things in motion, and they can be part of the study too, hopefully, and that they can have some feedback as we go forward. Let's don't leave the public in the dark or down in a deep hole.
Councilmember Hernandez.
I do have a question, though. Is there a timeline for this consultant study or the rate study? And is it going to take place before the one that Corona Environmental is doing? Because are they going to need some information that Corona is doing in order for the rate study?
They're going to move in parallel, and I think the timeline for the rate study will be now through June, and so we'll be getting good numbers in that time period.
But they'll work together.
Oh yeah.
Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
And making sure that this particular has as much as we possibly can of informing the community so that they're being as proactive up front before it comes back to council, so that when it does come to us, we've educated the majority that would come and make comment at the last minute. So just being as proactive as you possibly can in getting this word out. And our media here is available to let the community know that we want to hear from them and be part of this solution.
I also think that we need to remind people of the days for the watering. You know, we said 15 minutes, and what days, odd and even, and the whole thing. I mean, we had it out there, and then it rained. And it's like, I think people kind of forgot, and then it rained a little bit again, and I don't think people really know or wrote it down. So we've had more hot weather, although we're expecting rain again, maybe this weekend, but I think that needs to be in the forefront too, reminder, and maybe in the newspaper too, you know, the days, so that we could put that odd, even, you can water, when.
We are planning to put that in the March newsletter.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Dutra.
A quick question. On the communities that had higher rates, I think it was Capitola and SoCal.
Everybody.
Everybody. Well, okay. With the highest, do you know what their problems are with the issue? Are they on top of it and they don't have the issues that we do? Because we can also sell it that way. I mean, if they're not having problems and they have higher rates, then clearly we can give a little bit so we can be problemless as well.
They absolutely have much larger capital funds and capital project planning lists. I've seen them. I know, City of Santa Cruz has $30 million of projects going on at any one time.
So how do their pipes look compared to ours?
Well, I'm sure they've replaced a lot more than we have.
So they're in a better boat. So that's something to really, talk about, is that these communities who, are paying quite a bit more than us, their infrastructure is a lot, it's newer. And, and like Councilmember Hernandez said, prevention is important. And I think we need to sell that to our community.
Okay, I think you're right. That's a great message.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's have our roll call vote.
Kaufman Gomez?
Yes.
Dutra?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Hurst?
Yes.
Bielicic?
Yes, with reservation, because it's so tough on people to keep raising things, but I don't know what else we're going to do at this point, so.
Okay.
Yes, we do. That's it. And those broken pipes are really, that's sad. It's really sad, and it looks like we need to be proactive. Probably should have been proactive 20 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we've got to fix it.
Okay.
So now we have, thank you very much for your report. Appreciate it. Requests and scheduling for any future agenda items. Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
I'd like to see us bring back at least a briefing on the downtown business development. We've invested money for the 4 blocks of Main Street, knowing a little bit more if the sequence of the lighting is going to be ready to go, what we've got in the plans or in the works of any kind of changes there. And the community that was involved with a lot of the downtown, it's been probably 6 months since we've reconvened, and I don't know if we have a progress report as a result of any of the changes or the money that was put towards that. And then also I'd like to talk, I'd like to be able to check on how the kitchen incubator and the plaza vigil, the involvement the city has, and knowing what progress is made on some of the economic development and the businesses flourishing somehow through those agencies here as well.
Well, in terms of a Pajaro CDC, which built a kitchen incubator, we give $40,000 a year to a Pajaro CDC. We gave nothing to the kitchen incubator. We usually get a presentation from them in the fall before the CDBG action plan comes to the council, because the $40,000 that they get is CDBG, and they don't get it through the social service grants. So if it's okay with you, we would do it after the budget. We would have a Pajaro CDC come in and give up an update, if that works for you.
Yeah, that would be helpful in terms of the arrangement, because we have a lot of people. I just need to understand better that we have a lot of people that are in an incubator for a lot longer than I've been in business myself, and I just want to know how that's supposed to work. I thought traditionally it was you go in, you incubate, you grow, and then you occupy some of the vacancies. And I just want to know what the process is that is meant for.
Yeah, I think Carmen would really appreciate spending a couple of hours with you at the center, so I'll have her call you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other topics? Councilmember Hernandez.
I mentioned it earlier about Bob Fitch, the photographer, and I'd like to see if we can get a proclamation and like a presentation. You know, his whole collection went to the Stanford University Library, their archives, and the MLK statue that was done for the MLK National Library, it was based on his photo that he took of him, as well as the Cesar Chavez stamp was based on the photo that he took.
That's right, he did, yes.
So,
And,
you know.
also, we had a member of the public talk about Kenny Sears. Wrote a letter asking for Kenny Sears Day, so I think we should look at that. Other items? I know that we've talked about food trucks, we've talked about panhandling, temporary use permits, the carts.
Parking.
So you want parking? Can you be specific about the parking?
The parking in neighborhoods, whether it's going to be permitted, if we, how many, not allowing for 10 cars to a house to take up a street. So.
Okay. So you're requesting a permit parking, residential permit
Residential,
parking?
yes.
Okay. It'll be requested by you.
That's fine.
Wait, we were just talking about three families in the house.
A single family residence.
Yeah. I mean, some streets are really.
Yes, Councilmember Hurst.
Well, I don't know if we can regulate how many cars people own, but I think we ought to take a look at graffiti sometime and maybe have a report or some way to bring more public awareness to graffiti. I know we've recently apprehended a couple of vandals and we've made some progress, but it's still a blight that contributes to kind of the overall aspect of deterioration and blight, and just not a good feeling for folks. So something on graffiti awareness at some point in time. I don't think it's a pressing issue, but.
Well, I kind of think it is, because it seems like it's everywhere, and I know there's one particular building I've seen them clean it off and graffiti, and clean it off and graffiti, and clean it off and graffiti, and it's like, how long does it take? Who's responsible? When does it stop?
It'd be a great opportunity to have a little more public dialogue and a little public awareness about it.
It does upset the public, no doubt.
I hear about it all the time.
Right.
I call in a lot of graffiti.
Right. Other items to be discussed? Any emergency items to add? None. Okay, well, that concludes our.
On
Councilmember-
10.3, the reported disbursements, I know we don't always get to focus on those quite as much as we might like, but it is money, and all the money adds up. All I want to point out is that there are a number of toilet rebates in the disbursement and washing machine rebates, and so there's still rebates going on out there in the community. There's still toilets that need to be replaced. There's old washing machines that could come out and people could get $100 back from the city. There's opportunities to save further water. It may not fix the pipes, but it could help bottom line in some way. And there's a plan already in place to assist the residents that not everybody knows about. So I just bring that up because it's very clear in the disbursements how many toilet rebates and how many washers were rebated.
And as we know, things continue to improve every few months. I mean, you buy a toilet last year and there's a new model and a better flush thing. I mean, it seems that it is time, and the city's been very supportive of things like that. So any other comments tonight? Yes, Councilmember Kaufman Gomez.
All right, I think that the mic is ready to go home too. We were talking a little bit about some cleanup, and I think what we're possibly trying to do is maybe check with the chamber and see if maybe as a community of businesses to come out and recognize some things and maybe put together some teamwork and doing some cleanup in the community as well, in the business community. And maybe that'll roll over to some things going on with the schools and in terms of pride of your neighborhood. And so I'm hoping to see some of those projects flourish with volunteering coming out in our business community and doing some cleanup and whatnot, and helping other businesses look cleaner and more presentable in our area, so that when people come to town, there's pride in our community and our businesses in our community. So hopefully we'll see some of those projects come to fruition here as well.
Okay, thank you. And thank all of you for your late night and your good effort. And that concludes our meeting tonight. So adjourned.